welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for The Young Folks. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he is a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend. It's Will Ashton.
Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. How about you?
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was all right. How about yours?
I gave thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I gave thanks.
It's the season.
That we have this podcast.
Yeah,
that we have award season. That we have everything that we have.
I'm less thankful for award season, but
really?
I'm thankful for the pomp and circumstance of award season.
I like the energy of it. The hustle, the bustle, the what's next.
Sure, I like the influx of movies that comes in. I'm not as fond as the competitive we need to tout this movie against this movie, and this one has to suck because that movie is better in my view.
That happens a little later, though, doesn't it? That's going to get
it's
closer
already
to the
happening.
Oscars, I guess. But I'm not paying attention to I'm just paying attention to the fact that almost every day I'm watching really good movies. That's my favorite thing about this season. December.
Yeah, well, that's for me as well. But I feel like that part of it doesn't happen for me until January when I'm actually getting these movies. But you're a little bit luckier than I am in that respect.
For now, but anyway, you can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive, on cinemaholics.com. On that website, you will also find our written reviews, some other bonus content for the show. You will also find our merch page. So if you want to support the show and you're like, yeah, I know about the Patreon, patreon.com/cinemaholics, monthly perks and all that fun stuff, sure, whatever. But if you want merch, if you want stuff with our logo on it, should I just tell them? It happened? The merch is here. The new logo. So the retro stuff is still available for a limited time. Okay, we're keeping it up for a minute. We're giving you a heads up. It is the holidays. So if you love the retro Cinemaholics logo, you can't let it go since 2017. Your last chance is coming up.
Yeah, I like the retro stuff. I'm happy with the new stuff as well, but I like having that retro stuff on hand at least for a little bit.
It's going into the Cinemaholics vault. And if you're interested, there is a hoodie, a t-shirt, and a shot glass and a coffee mug. We have new merch though. If you've been waiting because you're look, no disrespect to the logo that came before, but I got to make sure that I'm repping the latest and greatest. And then I'm with you there. We have totally brand new merch up with the new logo for the website for Cinemaholics brand. That's right. The Cinemaholics logo on a hoodie. We have a Cinemaholics t-shirt. When I sent Will Ashton the image of the Cinemaholics t-shirt design, I think, Will, your exact words were, "That shirt is a banger," if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I am fond of the new t-shirt. I think you'll be the coolest kid at the multiplex if you're wearing that t-shirt. That's what I'm going to say right now. You'll be the
coolest movie podcast listener in the entire mall.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I think, you're going to be walking around extra confident with that t-shirt. People are going to be like, "Hey, what's that t-shirt about?" You're going to snap your fingers and be like, "Wouldn't you like to know?" And then,
We also have fridge magnets. We have coasters, all kinds of stocking stuffers. Hey, look, if you actually, for real, if you have a friend or you know somebody who's a fan of the show, maybe you listen to the show with your significant other, who knows? The perfect stocking stuffer for the season. We got the holidays coming up. You can find the merch page on cinemaholics.com. Definitely check it out. But if you're look, I'm strapped for cash. It's the holidays. Okay. I did Black Friday. That was enough. We totally understand you there. Hey, look, if you want to support the show non-financially, free, the easy way to do that, just go on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. Tell us what you like about the show. Hey, what you think we should do better in the future. We want to hear from you. Or you can email us. We always love hearing from you. That's the greatest gift of all. cinemahawkspodcast@gmail.com is how you email us. And if you forgot that already, the links to everything I just talked about is in the show notes. And that's that. Will, we are talking about a couple of big old, well, I shouldn't say a couple of big old movies. We're talking about a big movie, a big Disney animated movie, and then something not so big. What are we talking about?
Well, first we're talking about Disney's Encanto, which is, I believe, currently the frontrunner for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars.
It could be.
I could be wrong.
You know what? I think that I would prefer Luca or Mitchell's versus the Machines. I prefer those two animated films as far as I prefer Crypto Zoo as well, but I don't think that stands a single chance.
Yeah.
But I like Encanto quite a bit, so I would, be happy with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be happier if Flea got considered over Mitchell versus Machines, or maybe even
Flea's
Luca,
quite good.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be an interesting race in that category. You're a little bit more impassioned with that than I am, but we can discuss that later.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I also say real quick, I think 2021, fantastic year for animation. Really great animated films came out this year, but yeah, we'll talk about it then. But yeah, what's the other one?
Yeah, look, okay, that's another discussion. But Anyway, the other movie is HBO Max's 8-Bit Christmas, starring Neil Patrick Harris.
Which I have to admit, I looked for it first on Netflix because I was like, all right, 8-Bit Christmas. It felt like a Netflix movie to me. And then I was like, oh, it's on HBO Max.
Yeah. I didn't have any trouble finding it, but I can understand your confusion.
Yeah, I wasn't as dumb and confused as you were, Joe. Yeah, I get it. But okay, yeah, those are the only two. That said, we have watched a bunch of movies between the two of us.
Sure.
It's just that we haven't been watching the same movies. Kind of alluded to that at the beginning of the show, because you also saw The Humans. We'll talk about some in a little bit, but you saw a couple of films through a film festival. I've been catching up on awards movies, and it's just the stars haven't aligned for the two of us to watch the same stuff lately, which is weird. Will, I'm missing my moving buddy, my movie buddy.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to be catching up eventually. It's just that I think you're going to be hopefully catching up with some of the things I was able to see, and then subsequently I'm going to be seeing the things that you saw. So,
right. Yeah.
Though we'll be lined up eventually, but for the time being, we're a little bit off kilter. But
yeah.
That's the way it is.
I purposefully sought out 8-Bit Christmas because you did watch it. I was like, all right, you sat down for 8-Bit Christmas. I was going to watch A Boy Called Christmas. I chose that one instead. Yeah.
I forgot about that one. That's on Netflix, right? That is actually on Netflix.
It is. Chelsea Durman for The Young Folks reviewed it, and I'm going to be putting that review out through The Young Folks pretty soon. Happy to do it. It seems like a very interesting little movie, and it's the holidays. This is my favorite time of year for movies. It really is. Because even when I watch a bad movie, I don't care. I'm just like, I watched Cyrano, and Cyrano had like the opening 20 minutes of that movie. I was like, this is fantastic. I'm loving this. Like, it's everything that I love about a movie. And then the movie craps out from there, and I was so sad. But it's fine, because then later I watched Wolf, which is a much better film. Not a great film,
really?
But I enjoyed it quite a bit. Yeah.
I've heard Wolf is not that great.
Yeah, I saw there were some negative reviews, and I get them. Valid criticisms. Wolf is a new movie with George McKay in it, and also Lily Rose Depp. It's definitely a movie that I struggle with, but I thought was immensely fascinating. Like, it was an interesting movie. Like, even if you end up hating it, it's one of those movies where I'm glad I watched it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the trailer, I didn't watch the whole trailer, but I saw I think a little bit on Facebook or something, and it looks like YA The Lobster, which I definitely find amusing, so I'd be curious to check it out.
That's kind of where I'm at. It's like, baby's first Yorgos Lanthimos, and it's definitely not as strong as any of his films, but while I was watching it, I was legitimately thinking, like, man, this is something that I think, Will, you would get something out of. Compared to a lot of the other films we've been watching lately. It's like a nice little palate cleanser if you're looking for some strong indie. But anyway, that's all to say, it's just a great time for movies in general. Now, we've talked about this a bunch. We've been looking at, some movies that maybe are going to be contenders for Best Picture. We talked about movies like Belfast on the show already. We talked about King Richard. We're going to be talking about Power of the Dog pretty soon. We were hoping to talk about that today, but the timing didn't quite work out. I wasn't able to see it in time. I think, Will, you weren't able to see it in the theater quite yet, but we will get to that eventually. But, Will, I got myself a copy of the Los Angeles Times in my hand.
Yeah, you're real proud of that. I'm excited to see this. Yeah.
Well, it was weird because it came in the mailbox, and I don't usually get LA Times. I'll get Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and all that stuff. But for people who don't know, I've been asked this a couple times. It's like when people listen to Cinemaholics, they kind of question, how do you and Will know so much about who is in what movie? A lot of it, I don't know about you, Will, but a lot of it for me is just reading the trades. Stuff like that sticks in my mind more. I'll read other websites. I'll read online journalism for film, and I remember some things. But when I read something in printed journalism, I don't know about you, but it sticks a little bit more. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that this cinematographer was working on this project, doing that whole thing. And I like to think it adds some flavor to the show. It's like if you want to listen to Cinemaholics, you want a little bit of context with stuff. Like I feel like that's something we offer, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. We know some of what we're talking about, right? But anyway, so the reason I bring this up is because I've been feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I've been feeling like, man, there's a lot. There's a lot of movies. Like, Will, we've had several conversations on chat, like, yeah, what do you think has a chance at Best Picture? We've gone through like lists of movies together of like, maybe this, maybe that. A lot of films we've talked about already. I thought this was like a cool little thing in the LA Times. And the reason I thought it was unusual and maybe I sound proud of it is because I'm not in LA, like very far from LA, and I wasn't expecting this, but I have been reading it and it's fun. But there's something called the Buzzmeter in this LA Times thing I got here. And I want to kind of go through it because I thought it was fascinating. A nice little rundown of not really Oscar predictions. It's like a mix of Oscar predictions, but also like films that people kind of hope do well at the Oscars, even if they aren't even nominated, right? I thought it'd be fun to maybe like refresh the listeners a bit on like what's out, what's in the conversation. A lot of these movies I would not have brought up and maybe I should have. So I kind of want to go through it with you if you're down.
Oh yeah, I'm always down to talk about these movies with you, John Negroni.
I think there's some interesting stuff to derive from this. Okay, so this first one's from Justin Chang. He's actually a writer for LA Times. And in this list, we should say, like, it doesn't just include LA Times writers. Yeah. I was looking for Kimber Myers. She wasn't on here, unfortunately. But
shame.
Some other great writers on here. Some ones that I don't know super well, to be totally honest with you. But anyway, Justin Chang, very familiar with Justin Chang. Great critic.
Yeah.
Yeah, his puns are unrivaled. These are some of the films that he brought up. So the ones that he has on here that I've seen, Drive My Car. I just watched that film this past week. Fantastic movie from Risque. I'm forgetting his last name, but he's a fantastic Japanese director. Will Ashton, are you going to watch Drive My Car? Is that happening?
Yeah, we're supposed to be getting that at the theater where I work in January, so it might be a little bit of a delay when I get a chance to see it, but I am planning to see it for sure. Jealous
you get to see it in the theater. Very, very
hopefully.
Jealous.
I mean, you never know.
If that happens.
Yeah. But we'll see.
Also, he put up The Disciple, a film I remember you really liked, right? On Netflix?
Yeah, good movie. Good movie.
Yeah, very, very solid flick. I enjoyed it as well. Licorice Pizza, one of my favorite movies of the year. I know you're chomping at the bit to take a bite out of Licorice Pizza.
Yeah, exact phrase I was going to use, so absolutely.
Souvenir Part 2, which I don't think you didn't get around to Souvenir Part 2, did you?
It's coming to Pittsburgh on December 10th at the theater where I work, so that's when I'll hopefully get a chance to see it.
Yes. As soon as you see the Souvenir in Part 2, we really need to have a conversation because I have a lot of feelings about that and Part 1 that need to be addressed. Here's a surprising one. The Green Knight. There's still some buzz for The Green Knight.
Why is that surprising?
I don't know. I was feeling like people were forgetting that The Green Knight exists. Like, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
I was just having a conversation about Green Knight not even 2 hours ago.
Wow. Yeah, I wish I lived your life.
Sure.
Was it with a civilian or was it with a fellow film enthusiast? What was the context for that?
A friend.
Okay. Do they split the difference a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Fair enough. Look, I love Green Knight. It's another one of my favorite movies of the year. I would be so happy if it got a little bit of love. So I was happy to see it here from Justin Chang. Okay, the last one on here that I've seen, The Killing of Two Lovers. Well, another one of my favorite films of the year. It's currently on, I think, my top 15 of 2021.
Oh, wow. All right.
Oh, yeah. I love that film. Fantastic film. I still think about it.
I'm weirdly in the other camp where I like it. I remember liking it a lot when I saw it. I have not really given a second thought since we've seen it, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised, but I guess not that surprised. I mean, different strokes. All right, here are the movies he brings up that I haven't seen. Memoria. I know.
Yeah, supposedly very, very good. Having a very, very limited theatrical rollout, so who knows when I'll get the chance to see it. But I'm definitely excited and curious to see that one.
Yeah, I mean, we both have been talking about how great it would be to check it out. This is the new film from. I do not know how to pronounce his name. I don't think I've ever attempted to pronounce his name before.
Well, yeah, I don't.
He's a Thai filmmaker.
Doesn't he? His nickname is Joe, right?
Is it? Okay.
I'll double check that. but I thought people call him just Joe.
He's a director. People who don't know, he has, his films have reflected a lot on modern homosexuality. Like I said, he's a Thai filmmaker, very indie, and I think I've seen a couple of his short films. I don't know if I've ever seen a feature film from him.
You never saw Uncle Boomy? You Can Recall Past Lives?
No, I never saw that. That was a Cannes film, if I recall, from like a decade ago. So no, I was it was like the year before I really started like checking out indie films on a consistent basis. So yeah, I kind of missed it, but I know that one's supposed to be well liked. So Memoria is his latest.
Yeah. So I looked it up. Yeah. He is often known simply as Joe or Jay.
Okay. Another film from here, Parallel Mothers. I hadn't heard of this one. Have you heard of Parallel Mothers?
Yeah. You know who directed this one, right?
Oh, Pedro Almodovar.
Yes, of course. One of my favorite working filmmakers. So
I legitimately thought this was coming out next fall. And
nope,
so like when
year.
I saw this, I was like, wait, what? This is an awards film? And so yeah, I looked into it and I saw, oh, okay, so it played it at New York Film Festival. I wasn't following the New York Film Festival as closely, yeah.
What's weird though about this one is that it's not in the race for best international feature film.
That is fascinating. Yeah,
that would be would that be for Spain?
Yeah, it would definitely be for Spain. Madrid is where Almodovar does most of his films. For listeners who don't know, Almodovar is like one of my favorite directors, just in general.
Same here.
And I legitimately thought, like, because Superior came out earlier, or premiered at Sundance, and I was expecting that to be more of like a push. Wasn't quite. And so here we are. I don't think that's gotten any sort of release since. I don't even know if it played at any festivals. But anyway, I would love to see Parallel Mothers pretty soon. Okay, here's a film, Days. Days.
Oh, Days. Okay.
Yes, from Ming Liu Tsai.
Yeah, I've heard that's good.
Yeah, I think it already came out a little bit ago, but I was kind of surprised. I mean, I remember it got like really good reviews. I think it was like an award, not an award. So I think it played at some festivals in 2020. So I don't know if it really like qualifies at this point, but I genuinely, I don't know much about it. Chinese film, I think.
Yeah, I saw some people log it on Letterboxd, say very kind things about it, but I do not know a whole lot about the film otherwise, unfortunately.
Okay, that was everything from Justin Chang. Okay. Tim Cockshell from KPCC's Film Week. I don't know if you ever listen to Film Week. I check it out every once in a while. Some films on his list. A bunch that I've seen here. Cyrano, which I kind of mentioned earlier. Didn't love that one. Great. I think it had a strong start. Peter Dinklage is really good in the film overall, but I thought the film ended. I did not like the ending of that film, and I also thought that it devolved into melodrama. I was very disappointed with how Cyrano sort of like.
Sure.
I don't know. It just starts off with this like as a swashbuckling musical. Will, what else? What other kind of movie has my number more than that?
You obviously have been advocating for more swashbuckling films.
Yeah.
So that's a little surprising and disappointing that you're not more.
Well, they got rid of the swashbuckling and they just go right. Then it just becomes like 17 other films I've seen about like, oh, you know, he loves her, but she just doesn't know. And would she ever accept him? Who knows? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's not as strong. He also picks Belfast, which I think is a pretty popular pick. Coda. Both of those movies we talked about.
Yeah.
Happy to see Red Rocket, currently my favorite film of the year on here. The French Dispatch, another film I really, really like this year. Currently in my top 20.
Probably my top 10 at the moment.
Fantastic. And Violet. The first I've ever heard of anybody being like, Violet, that's a movie that came out that could win an award or two, right?
Yeah.
But, that's a pretty rare opinion.
That got a really quiet rollout after its festival run, right?
Yeah, it did. We didn't even get back into it. I mean, we talked about it from South by, but we just didn't,
Yeah, you were kinder on that film than I was. Also, did you mention...
I enjoyed it.
You were talking about Superior, the Sundance film earlier?
Yes.
It took me a minute to put two together. I totally forgot the title of the film. I was not crazy about that film, but I know you like that one a lot, so that's fine. But yeah, I did enjoy Violet. Not as much as you did, but I think it's worth a watch.
There's also this film I've been really anxious to see, A Hero, which is going to be on Amazon. And
yeah, that might win international feature film this year.
It's looking good for it. Stars are aligning for it. I was so disappointed because I got a for your consideration box from Amazon for the movie. And I was like, oh, amazing. I get to watch the film. They sent me pistachios and like pickled stuff. And they sent me like this like rock candy. And I was like, this is great. Anyway, where's the screener? There was no screener in there. They just sent me food without the screener.
What if you like consume the food and that's how you watch the film? Like you just
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He opens the third eye and just like, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Here are the couple films that Tim Cockshell put that I haven't seen yet. I know you have seen this, The Worst Person in the World.
Yes. So that's one of the films. Yeah, that's one of the films I saw at the Three Rivers Film Festival a couple weeks ago. That is the third installment in the unofficial Oslo trilogy from writer-director Joachim Trier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, but
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's a Neon title. I don't think it's actually getting it's in the same camp as Portrait of a Lady on Fire, in that I think it doesn't get a wide release until February, but it's going to be. It got an Oscar qualifying release in New York, I think, a couple weeks ago, and then, like I said, I saw it at a film festival, so I will be qualifying it for the 2021 list, because currently it sits, I think, in my top 5 for the year. I really liked it a lot, and I'm looking forward to talking about it more with you.
You said top 5?
Yeah, top 5 at the moment. Certainly top 10. And I think I cannot remember the name of the actress, but I don't think she's going to get nominated for Best Actress, but she's probably my pick for.
Excuse me, I don't know if I'm Renate Reinsve.
Yeah, she is probably my pick for Best Actress at the moment. I think she's terrific in the film, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that more with you. I don't want to say too much more because I know I don't have a lot of time to talk about it today, but because if I start going into it more, I'm going to be speaking for like 20 or so minutes. So I don't want to say too much at the moment, but it's a really, really good film. I like it a lot, and I'm excited for you to see it. Yeah,
I'm excited to see it as well. And obviously I'm curious since it's part of the Oslo trilogy. And I remember first hearing buzz about this at Cannes. And I think I think Renate actually like won the award for Best Actress for the movie. For Cannes.
Well deserved. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the other films that were at the Cannes Film Festival this year, but I mean, a few, but not all of them. But I mean, yeah, between her and then the lead actress from Titan, I think it's tough choosing between the two, but I thought she was well-deserved win for that award. So, yeah. The other two movies here, Tragedy of Macbeth. I'm hearing it's fantastic. It's going to be coming out later this month. Cannot wait for that movie. Yeah, I know. So Denzel Washington, Franz McDormand. It's coming. Yeah. It's coming. I love everything that's coming out of that movie. I hope it's good. Yeah, me too. The Power of the Dog. Now, The Power of the Dog, I don't know, Will. It starts streaming on Netflix pretty soon. Like, as we record this, we're literally hours away. Yeah, the film will be available. It will be available to stream by the time people are listening to this, for sure. Yeah, let's table that, because I think some people are saying, you know what, this could win Best Picture. This could beat Belfast. You think so? It could beat Licorice Pizza. Some people are saying it. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, the vibe I'm getting, and I would love to be proven wrong if the movie is as good as people are saying it is, but I'm getting the vibe that's going to be more of a critical darling than a Best Picture winner. Sometimes the critical darling wins. Sometimes, I mean, there's always like the spotlight win where it's, everyone likes the movie, but the factions get divided, and so everyone's just like, well, we all like this movie. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, then that wins. I'm getting the feeling that Belfast and King Richard are going to kind of rob each other's thunder a little bit, and then Power of the Dog and Licorice Pizza are going to be the other two nominated for Best Picture that are going to kind of steal from each other a little bit in terms of voters. I think critics are going more for Power of the Dog and Licorice Pizza right now in terms of enthusiasm, but Belfast and King Richard are the big crowd-pleasing industry films. So yeah, I mean, the frontrunners I think at the moment are like Belfast, King Richard, Dune, West Side Story, Licorice Pizza, and Power of the Dog, right? That's right, yeah. And West Side Story is a recent upset, because I think some people were writing that film off. They were saying, okay, Spielberg hasn't made a great film in a while. This is a remake, and Ansel Elgort is canceled, as we talked about last week. People do not want Ansel Elgort to succeed.
The movie West Side Story started screening this past week. Raves. People are loving the film. I don't see it till next week, and I think it comes out next weekend. So who knows what we'll think of the movie? But I'm hearing it's like surprisingly much better than critics were anticipating. I think some people were always thinking this was going to be great, though.
Well, it's Spielberg. I mean,
sure.
But I mean, there's also like Nightmare Alley, which you and I will be seeing tomorrow. But no one at the moment. At the moment, nobody knows exactly how well that's going to shake up. Some people are thinking that is going to be an upset. Some people don't. So who knows? But
Nightmare Alley is on the next list from Dave Karger of IMDb and TCM. He has Nightmare Alley on here. Yeah.
All right.
He also has West Side Story and Dune. Okay. The only movie he has on here that we haven't mentioned already is Being the Ricardos. Now, I really want to see that film.
Really?
I do. I really want to see it. I grew up on I Love Lucy.
Sure. Okay? But I just think, I mean, the dude,
You're not into
Aaron Sorkin, the last time he tried to do a movie or a show about a sitcom, it was at Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, and that was like one of his most notorious failures.
That was so long ago, Will Ashton.
But
wasn't that like the early 2000s or mid 2000s?
The man just doesn't really seem to like I like Aaron Sorkin. I think he's a very talented screenwriter. I think The Social Network is one of the best screenplays of the current millennium. But like the dude just doesn't seem to understand comedy. Like he just it just doesn't factor into his brain.
Well,
and I feel like that's going to be the case here as well.
Though.
Sure,
I
why
get
not?
What you're saying, like I had the same reservations, Will. I was not expecting much from this, but apparently Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem, apparently they kill it in this movie. J.K. Simmons too, I heard, is in it, and Tony Hale, and I want this to be good. I'm letting myself get hyped. And
I'll go in with open mind, man. I don't know.
Yeah. That one's going to be, I think Amazon's going to be doing a theatrical run for it next weekend. And then it'll be on Prime Video right before Christmas. So we have plenty of chances to check it out for our end of the year list and everything like that. I have high hopes.
Yeah.
And I'm a little sad that Cate Blanchett isn't playing Lucille Ball. I mean, that when the project was first announced, that's who I was like, oh man, Cate Blanchett is the perfect casting.
I mean,
but I'm hearing Nicole Kidman kills it as well.
I feel like Cate Blanchett makes more sense to me than Nicole Kidman, but like you said, Nicole Kidman's getting good reviews, so who knows?
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at, let's see, I don't see a lot of other ones. Okay. Claudia Puig, also KPCC's Film Week. She has a couple on here that we haven't mentioned. Swan Song. I'm supposed to be seeing Swan Song literally tomorrow. And I'm very excited about this.
I see that on Thursday.
Yeah, and look, Mahershala Ali, I think one of the first times we're really going to see this actor who I personally believe Mahershala Ali is one of the best actors today. He's in the top 10, easily.
Has 2 Oscars to prove it.
He does, but that's the thing, right? His Oscars so far, he has been not really the lead. He's been a co-lead, or he's been a supporting actor in the films that have gotten the most buzz. Guy gets his real big break with House of Cards, where he really was not supposed to be that big of a character, but he was so good in House of Cards that people were like, this guy is coming. And then Moonlight happens, and then Green Book. But that said,
I mean, say what you will about Green Book, but he is good in it.
He was. He's the reason that film is watchable, in my opinion. And I think some people wouldn't even say that. But Swan Song, I'm hearing, is like a powerhouse performance from the man. I cannot wait to see it.
Okay, I guess it's getting good reviews. I actually don't really know much about this film. I keep getting it confused because there was another movie we saw at South by Southwest called Swan Song, and every time I try to look up the one or the other, I get I get the wrong movie. So it's
Google
just
is always playing with us,
right? Yeah. So I like the Udo Kier one. So I mean, it's got somewhat tough competition, I guess. But I'm excited to see it. That one has like you said, I think Naomi Harris and Glenn Close in it as well, and Awkwafina.
Yeah.
Stacked
terrific
cast.
Looking cast, but he is the clear lead. That's what has me the most interested. I was also fascinated to see Claudia Puig, who I'm not as familiar with this critic, but she also pinpointed Passing. Now, Passing is, of course, a film that we watched at Sundance. It came out on Netflix already. Not a quiet release. It got a little bit of like the tiniest, like gentle, like oof from Netflix. But I think that Netflix has hopes for Ruth Negga getting a supporting nod or a lead, and Tessa Thompson as well, maybe. But I think Ruth Negga is supposed to be like the person who kind of pushes that film to acclaim. I gotta say, I liked Passing fine. We've talked about it a couple times on this show.
Yeah, pretty good film.
But I got it's not the film that I'm enthusiastic about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the type of film that when I see it on lists like this, I get a little excited because it's just like it's a movie I wish I shared the enthusiasm that a lot of people had for it. Like I liked the film, I didn't love it, but I think it's a really thoughtful, personal film, and I'm glad a lot of people are really connecting with it in a meaningful way. So. Maybe I'll see it again somewhere down the line and share their enthusiasm. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see it on lists like this for sure.
Claudia also mentions Parallel Mothers, Nightmare Alley, some stuff we already talked about.
Oh, okay.
Tragedy of Macbeth, but also Drive My Car, which we already mentioned Drive My Car earlier.
Yes.
And that was Justin Chang brought up Drive My Car. I want to say real quick, there's some critics who are like really looking at Drive My Car as like this could be an upset for Best International Feature. I know we already discussed what we think will probably win, but a few other people have said, Drive My Car is like legitimately really good. We'll have to have a conversation about that in the future. But then moving on to another one, or did you have something?
Well, I think international feature film is going to be pretty competitive this year. I mean,
yeah.
We're looking at like you said, Flea and A Hero.
I was about to mention this next critic has Flea. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Flea, and then maybe Titan, maybe The Hand of God. I think is supposed to be in there.
Yeah. Well, I was just looking at some of the critical reception for Hand of God, and it's a little bit weaker than I was expecting for that movie. But it could happen.
But I don't know. I mean, it's like it could go any number of ways. I think I'm Your Man is also in the category. I think it's Germany's pick. That seems to be getting some
that's
consideration.
Pretty low on the list. Yeah.
Compartment number 6 is apparently a contender. Did I mention Titan already? You
mentioned Titan, which it only gets brought up from one critic on the Buzzmeter.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
That's coming up.
How about Come On? Is that on anybody's Buzz meter?
This was the biggest surprise. Nobody here has Come On. And that was the one that I was like, wait, where is Mike Mills's fourth film? And I literally just edited Yasmin Kleinbart's review of Come On for the young folks. She wrote a fantastic review for it on that website. And I'm sad because I haven't seen Come On quite yet. I'm going to get to it eventually, but I'm hearing that is a really good Joaquin Phoenix performance. It's a good A24 film. It's, to me though, I think like a lot of other Mike Mills's films, it's like the feel good indie film almost. Like not feel good in a pejorative, but more of like, okay, this isn't the movie that's going to like challenge, or it's not Titan, it's not Power of the Dog. It's not complex.
Sure.
But it's a movie that makes critics like, this is their, I don't want to say Belfast, but you see what I'm saying, I guess.
Well, then what's A24's like Oscar frontrunner at this point? I don't really know. Like, what are they? I mean, is it Tragedy Macbeth? Is it Come On?
I would say so.
Is it Red Rocket? I don't know.
I think it's Tragedy of Macbeth, but I don't want to say anything like super definitive because neither film has really like come out yet. Like, who knows? Like, what if it was after Yang? Right? Kogonada's film.
I think that's 2022 at this point.
Is it 2022? I thought they were going to squeeze it in. Okay.
I honestly had no idea, but I thought it was 2022 at this point.
I think we can write off Lamb, which I've heard is good, but like challenging, And,
I mean, that one seemed to be more of a commercial feature for them anyway. Like that, but that is I think the Danish pick for international feature film. So that could potentially get nominated there, but I don't think it's happening. But we'll see. Right,
and then we talked about The Green Knight, which I was, kind of hoping would be a bigger E24 push. It probably would have been last year if it had come out last year. Although I think Minari was always going to be the darling. Val, I think, still has a pretty good chance. A documentary, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot that was them.
It's one of the buzzier documentaries of the year.
Maybe, yeah. There's
False
also
Positive.
Zola.
People just forgot.
False Positive, yeah. I was thinking Zola, but I don't think that's going to get Oscar consideration.
Which is so fascinating, right? Zola was this big summer movie. They marketed the heck out of it. Do you know how much Zola made at the box office?
I genuinely don't know. I thought it underperformed.
It did. $4.9 million.
Yeah, I thought it didn't do that hot.
Absolutely disappointing. Because, I mean, look, we're talking about A24. Like, they don't expect, they don't routinely expect big blockbuster films. But Zola came out in, like, the middle of summer. They were pushing it as a mainstream film that had no cultural impact of any substantial value, right?
Yeah.
As far as I can understand. Minari made what, like 15 million, if I recall, in the box office. It did get a big awards push. But I mean, Farewell made like over 20 million.
Yeah. Well, how did Green Knight do?
Green Knights, let me look it up here. So the Green Knight box office, I'm going to say it's probably better than 5 million. It's probably like,
I was going to say probably at least 15 or 20 million would be my guess.
Let's see here. Yeah, so $18.9 million, which not great because the film's budget was, I think, like 10, 15 million, but it's not like they marketed it that much. So it probably broke even. But I mean, that said, 5 million for Zola? That's not great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not a bad film.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
There's also the Humans. Sorry.
I was going to say the Humans, which they just kind of dumped on Showtime rather unceremoniously, which I found to be kind of odd, but
I guess they don't have that's another Steven Yeun film, but it also has Richard Jenkins and Beanie Feldstein. And I haven't seen the film. I edited your review. Your review came up on the Young Folks. Great review, Will Ashton. You did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I always love editing your reviews. It's so fun.
Thank you.
That's a movie that I hope to see very soon. But yeah, do you not see the Humans kind of racking up a little bit of a buzz?
Well, I feel like if they put it on Showtime, that doesn't suggest they're super confident in it being an awards contender, right? Like they're kind of setting their sights on, I would think at this point, Red Rocket, Come On, Come On, and Tragedy of Macbeth. But I mean, I don't know, like they kind of left Souvenir Part 2 to dry as well, comparatively. Yeah. Which
I kind of understand. I mean, Souvenir Part 2 is kind of a niche film. It's not. It's a Spirit Independent Award kind of film. It's an enthusiast, it's almost like this year's Vox Lux. It's something that just kind of appeals to a really specific kind of person. Not that it would appeal to you because I know you liked Vox Lux a lot. But I mean, it's hard. It's why we don't have films it's why indie films typically don't have sequels. Because you're really asking a lot. And it also performed terribly. I think that film didn't even break $100,000 at the box office. Souvenir, the first one, I think at least broke $1 million, if I recall. So it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering that the second one's supposed to be even better than the first film.
Yeah, I would say the second one is far superior, in my opinion. The only other one here Ann Thompson has, because we mentioned Drive My Car, Flea, great documentary. I really enjoyed Flea. Another great animated film, as we'll talk about, in terms of the year's animated films. She also mentioned Cyrano, Parallel Mothers again, Power of the Dog, Dune, Belfast. Lots of Dune love from these critics. I don't think I've stressed that enough. King Richard, first critic to bring that up here. And also Spencer. Now, Spencer... I think like when Spencer came out, I was thinking, man, this could do it. This could be like a bit of a triple threat. It could really come in here as like a best picture upset with maybe like a best director, maybe with Kristen Stewart, maybe even like, I think that at this point though, like best actress and the score will probably be the two that it has a decent shot at. Best picture, I'm not seeing it at this point. I think people just kind of were like, yeah, Spencer. Good movie, but, not best picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't the movie people expected it to be. I think the movie it revealed itself to be is way more interesting than what other people wanted it to be.
Agreed.
I guess they were expecting it to be a more traditional, something like The Crown, like nothing against The Crown, but like a biopic that's more traditional, kind of focusing on the facts as opposed to fableizing her life as the movie does. So to me, it proved to be a more complex, interesting film than what I was going to expect going into it. But I can understand from the Academy's perspective, it probably was a more hard. I don't know what I'm trying to say. A film that's a little bit less accessible, I guess, than what they were hoping for ultimately.
I think that's spot on. All right, we have one last critic here, Glenn Whipp from LA Times. And yeah, he mentions a bunch of films that we've already gone over here. Licorice Pizza, once again, Drive My Car, Tragedy of Macbeth, Power of the Dog, Parallel Mothers, Worst Person in the World, Spencer, Passing, first and only person to mention Titan, which interesting.
Titan.
Yeah, I mean,
I like
Titan,
that movie.
That's pretty high up on your list, if I recall. And then another film, The Lost Daughter, which I got a screener for pretty recently. I'm hoping you check that one out pretty soon. That
one swept up the Gotham Awards this past weekend, I think. Yeah, so that I don't think that's going to be an awards contender, but that seems like another critics are really going to be championing this film, and I'm excited to see it. So I hope to be as enthusiastic about the film as they are, but we'll see.
I think if The Lost Daughter does anything, it'll be because the industry really loves Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think that's what it will come down to. I think she's well liked. Now, that said, Taylor Swift did totally eviscerate Jake pretty recently, and that might, rightfully or not.
Eviscerate?
Oh, yeah.
You think she eviscerated him? I think you're spending too much time
you watch
online,
All Too Well on YouTube? I did.
Yeah, I think eviscerate's a strong word there. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
It's pretty damning, Will Ashton. Can we agree on that?
I mean, movie, if you're in the know,
all the same.
If you're in the know, it's kind of damning. But I feel like a lot of people could watch that and not know that's about Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, what does Taylor Swift have against Dylan O'Brien?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I think the common thread between all of these Oscar experts, if you want to call them that, is Power of the Dog. It's the most common film on this list. Drive My Car is also pretty common on here, and Licorice Pizza and Tragedy of Macbeth, as we would expect. But yeah, I'm just saying, Will, I'm seeing a lot of buzz for Power of the Dog. We'll find out more. Once it hits Netflix tomorrow, a lot more critics are going to be able to see it. A lot more critics are going to start weighing in. The discourse is going to start happening, and we'll see what happens there.
I think my prediction at the moment, and this could very well change, but I think Power of the Dog is going to be more of a critical favorite than a Academy favorite. But at the same time, I do think a lot of people really like Jane Campion, and
that's what I was going to say next. Yeah,
I could see her certainly shaking up the Best Director race. And for all I know, I haven't seen the film, so maybe my opinion, I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm hoping I'm as positive as many people are on the film. But as far as being cynical about the Academy, I think they're going to be maybe more favorable towards the other films that are being considered at the moment, but we'll see. I don't know.
It's a long-awaited film from her, right? I think that her biggest movie, if we were looking at her whole filmography, probably The Piano. But
yes,
I mean that's decades ago at this point.
Yeah,
she hasn't made a film since They. Actually, I think she just produced that, didn't she? Bright Star was probably the last one.
I was going to say, Bright Star, I think, was the most recent one. That was 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a while
it's been
back.
About 12 years now, right?
Yeah. So I think that we're well due for a big effort from her. I mean, she doesn't make films very often, right? And when she does, people pay attention. So I'm very curious. All right. That was our big old Oscar conference. It was a big old Oscar check-in. I think that was fun, though. There was one last thing. You saw Petite Maman pretty recently, the new Celine Sciamma. Did you want to shout out any thoughts on that? I mean, I know we'll probably talk about it more when it hits a wider release. I saw it a while back. I love the film. It's wonderful. I don't know if it's in my top 20, probably in my top 30, but good film for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say like top 30 or 40 for me. Very charming, very sweet, very slight, but not in a bad way.
Wonderful
definitely
music. So good.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, it seemed to be mirroring a lot of the qualities that I like and appreciate in a Hayao Miyazaki film. And I thought that was indeliberate until I read some interviews from her, and I guess that was something that she was very conscious about throughout the filmmaking. Like I think one quote that I saw from her was something along the lines like, every time I was composing a shot, I was thinking, what would Hayao Miyazaki do? And that gives this movie kind of like a very whimsical, almost animated quality, even though it is, like you said, in live action. But there is something that I really appreciate about her films, whether it's like Tomboy or Girlhood or this film, where she seems very in tune with like young female perspectives in a way that seems to speak to them directly, but not like in a condescending way. Like it feels like it's true to the young experience, but in a way that feels nostalgic without that nostalgia feeling corrupting the pureness of it in a way that I think is a very, very tough thing to pull off. And it's something that seems very effortless when I watch her films. And I think that's really commendable. And I think this is no exception in that regard. I think the way that she incorporates feelings of grief and, this kind of like loss of innocence, but at the same time, like the sense of like kind of renewed faith in her family. That's without giving too much about the plot away. I think it's just it's a very tender, emotional film, and I believe it was also shot during COVID, so that intimacy kind of feels very apparent throughout. So it's a good film. I'm looking forward to talking about it a little bit more when it gets a wider release and we can dive into a little bit more, maybe a conversation that is almost as long as the film itself, because I think it's a tight 72 minutes, at least the version I saw. So it's a good film. That's all where I'll leave it for now.
It really is. Yeah. And you're right. It was shot last November, so a year ago. And it's humble. It's sweet. I think effortless is the right word, because Celine Sciamma, she's just one of those directors where, like, yeah, this person was born to make films. I think that she just has a vision of the world and of human beings that translates so well to the cinematic form. And it's one of those movies too, where I think sometimes, people listen to the show and they're like, you know what, John, well, I want to get more into indie films, but I'm intimidated. It's a lot of films. How do you know? Like, sometimes I watch these films and I think they're boring. And I feel like, maybe if I watched more of these, I wouldn't think they're that boring. I think Petite Maman is one of those movies you can watch where you're like, I think it can like break you in to indie films and the pace of it, the tenderness of it, without being too slow, without being too meditative for somebody who just might not be used to that from a film. I always like to liken it to, drinking a really good whiskey. Yeah, it tastes bitter at first. Sometimes you watch an indie film and it's boring as hell. Like, that happens. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about that. That's just because I think that it's an acquired taste, but it's very fulfilling once you put the time and effort in, because there is just a richness of flavor and complexity. And I think Petite Maman is just one of those movies that's like a gateway drink into really rich filmmaking. And I think Celine Sciamma, I mean, she's just so honest. She's just an honest filmmaker.
Yeah, and to kind of go off some of those thoughts, I think a lot of times independent films can be more idiosyncratic in a way that can be less accessible, because like they seem more directly personal to the filmmaker and they make decisions that you don't see in other contemporary films. So it can be a little bit tougher to figure out what they're going for and whether you like that or not. And so but as far as Petite Maman, I think this is probably one of her more accessible films. I mean, not that her other films weren't accessible, but I think this one, like I said, having that Miyazaki quality of just being really just humble, like you said, and sweet natured, and just, really no fuss or muss to it. Just tackling some really complicated stuff in a very simple, direct, and heartfelt way is just something that she really has a knack and talent for. And I think this one's going to win a lot of people over. So we can talk about more in February, whenever it comes out.
I'd say, like, if you're like, okay, I want Celine Sciamma double feature. And I think that Petite Maman would be a perfect opening to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is, I think, one of her masterwork films. And I think, like, starting with Petite Maman, it's such a great movie to get you in the right mood to appreciate something like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, in my opinion. I mean, you could also do it with Girlhood, because
good movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the one thing I'm kind of concerned about with Petite Maman when it comes out is that Portrait of a Lady on Fire is such a dense and rich movie as far as like how it tackles its themes and just the complexity of the film, not in terms of like being complicated or hard to follow, but there's a lot going on there. And the more I think about the film, the more I like it in that respect. But I could see people seeing that movie and then seeing a film like Petite Maman that is so directly simple and trying not to be as nuanced and complicated, though it does tackle a lot of complicated things emotionally. I think narratively, obviously, it's going for something a lot more simple and straightforward. And I could see some people being taken aback by that and maybe wondering, like, what was she really going for with that? And I think that simplicity is something I welcome, but I could see other people being maybe less appreciative of it for that reason.
Consider that your fair warning from Will. And I think that's fair. All right. That's Petite Maman. Make sure I say that right. Really good film. Really, really sweet film.
Is that, would you say it's one people can watch as a family?
Probably. I don't remember anything in it being, necessarily adult in terms of like there's death in the film. Like, we were having a little bit of a fun little chat earlier, like off air, about PG versus G.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't even know what this one is rated. Probably PG-13.
Yeah, I would say right.
But
is it PG-13? I would say it's probably like PG. Like,
who knows?
There's something. I'm just trying to remember. Like, I don't want to say like, oh, watch it with the family, and then someone watches with the family, and there's like some really graphic scene that I just totally forgot about. But I don't think there is
anything being graphic. But we watch too many movies. Like, you should not trust us on that. But if I had, like, my best guess is that it's PG, because there really just isn't anything in it that is difficult in that way. If that makes sense. There's no violence. There's no. Right. I don't remember a lot of language, like swearing or anything.
I was gonna say. I mean, it could maybe even pass for G. Like, I don't even think there's anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be thematic elements like Encanto.
Yeah.
Which what are thematic elements? I really don't honestly know.
We need to have like a long conversation with the what is it called, the MPAA, whatever their whole deal is.
Yeah, the Motion Picture. Yeah, Motion Picture Association of America. Yeah. You ever see the documentary This Film Was Not Yet Rated?
Yeah, well, I didn't finish it, but I remember it's fascinating.
Oh, I've seen it at least, I think, 2 or 3 times. It's a really, really good documentary, and it only continues to baffle me as far as like what the MPAA is all about. But that's another discussion.
We're due for a big change in terms of like movie ratings, because the G to R rating is just not useful anymore. Even the NC-17 at this point.
Yeah. Aren't we kind of starting to push away with that, though, with like this era of streaming, that like so many streaming movies aren't, I mean, unless with the exception of the ones that actually go to theaters and stuff like that, like Power of the Dog and Don't Look Up or whatever, most of the Netflix movies and streaming movies aren't, getting ratings. I think the exception might be HBO Max. I think those all movies, they all get ratings for some reason, but most streaming movies don't. So
it's kind of like in TV. It's like in TV, like, people are kind of aware of the ratings. They show up in the corner, but usually people just know things by the channel they're on. They're like, okay, if it's on Nickelodeon, then just don't worry about it. But if it's on, FX, like, you should probably be a little bit more discerning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think if it's on Nickelodeon, you should be at least a little discerning based on some of the content creators on that channel.
Let children have at it.
I'm talking. There's a couple creators involved with Nickelodeon who are not great people, as
like
we
Dan
found.
Schneider. Yeah. Okay, you know what? That's fair. I probably should have said like Disney Channel. I feel like
Ren Stimpy guy and all that. Yeah.
Drake Bell. But yeah. Anyway, but we could do a whole bonus episode about ratings, and I'm sure the listeners would like that. Or some listeners would like that, but we should get into our featured review. We've had a long off topic, so it's a lot of fun. Will always is. Yeah. But it's time to talk about the big movie of the week.
Sure.
Encanto.
Many years ago, this candle blessed our family with a miracle. Our house, our casita, came to life with magic.
Hola, casita.
time, every member of our family
Cecilia, up top!
was given their own magical gift.
I understand you.
I'm not super strong like Luisa.
The donkey's got out again.
On it! Or effortlessly perfect like Señorita Perfecta Isabella. But Mama, why am I the only one that didn't get a gift?
You're just as special as anyone else in this family.
You just healed my hand with an arepa con queso.
Encanto came out over Christmas, Thanksgiving, and it's the next big Disney animated film. We got 2 Disney animated films. Now, there's a difference between Walt Disney Animation and Pixar. I think sometimes people kind of get it confused. That's okay. Pixar is different. Pixar hasn't always been part of Disney, although Pixar and Disney have always made films together, Toy Story being the first one. But Pixar is based up here where I'm at, Bay Area. Okay, that's up in like the Oakland. It's technically in Emeryville, and Disney Animation that's down. That's over LA. That's Burbank, wherever. And Disney Animation, we're talking like the OG Disney. We're talking about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Pinocchio and Dumbo, all the way up to the modern day, where we have things like Frozen 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Moana, and now Encanto. Encanto, or you could also say Encanto. And Will, we were kind of talking about this. Some people do pronounce it Encanto, and that's not incorrect. I say Encanto because it's difficult to explain if you don't speak Spanish. Technically, in Spanish, you pronounce A as A. So Encanto. Like, that's how you're supposed to say it. But like Puerto Ricans and I guess Colombians too. My aunt is Colombian, so I'm fairly familiar with Colombian stuff. But I think that like it's like America. Like, there's no hard and fast rules. People just do whatever. And so some people do say Encanto. And it feels kind of weird to me personally, but it's totally doable. But Will, I think you had a run-in with your box office ticket manager involving this film. You had a big fight?
We did not have a big fight, and I feel bad for listeners because now we're delaying this conversation ever more for some trivialities. But yeah, I thought my box office ticket salesman was mispronouncing the name of the movie, and you told me otherwise, and so I apologize.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Just saying. I don't know. I always find Spanish pronunciation pretty interesting. But anyway, we've got a bunch of Disney films based in Latina countries, right? The last one I think that was pretty prominent was Coco, but that was Pixar. And we haven't really got a Disney animated film that was based in a South American country since Emperor's New Groove. I think that was supposed to be South America. If I'm not mistaken, right? I think like Peru, that's like Machu Picchu, is it? I might be wrong about that, actually.
I mean, Machu Picchu, I think, does factor into the plot, right? Of Emperor's New Groove?
That might be the case. It's been a little bit since I saw the film, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, look, Emperor's New Groove, that movie came out 21 years ago. It is not a Spanish film whatsoever. It's an entirely English-speaking cast. It's just, it's what it is. A very funny film. But we haven't had a film that would like really sort of dug into the culture of South America in a very substantial way, probably since the Three Caballeros in the 40s. So if you don't know, Disney had like animated short film compilations that they did after Dumbo and Pinocchio didn't do super well. It was during World War II, and short film compilations were just a lot easier to do. And I know Three Caballeros, and I think there was another thing with like Donald Duck and those two characters. They basically did like South American stuff. That was the last time I think we had a Disney film set in Colombia. Colombia with an O, Colo, to be clear. Now, Encanto is a modern musical fantasy comedy. It's also computer animated, of course. And it's the latest film from Walt Disney Animation. We got another one from them earlier this year, Raya and the Last Dragon. And that had been the first Walt Disney animated film since, I believe, Frozen 2 in 2019. Because I don't think we got any in 2020, right? Am I missing anything there?
I think you're correct.
I want to say that's the case, but I'll definitely double check myself later. But anyway, that said, Raya and the Last Dragon. We talked about that film earlier in the year, and that movie like explored like South Asian cultures like Vietnamese and a few in Malaysia, a few other countries there. It was more of like a fantasy story. It was very much like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but with Disney. Now, Encanto is very different. Encanto is a film that is way simpler. It doesn't have a lot of villains. It doesn't have a lot of action and fantasy in that sense. It has fantasy in the sense that it revolves around characters who essentially have superpowers. When we start the film, we find out that there is this family called the Magical Family. And it's kind of implied that it's like a modern day sort of thing. And each member of the Magical Family, they live in this like magical house that they call their casita. And they each have like a special ability. It's kind of like, not like the X-Men in terms of like, they don't team up and fight crime, but they each have like their own special ability that sort of corresponds with like who they are. Right. And so there's like a character who feels like she has to carry the burdens of the whole family. So she has super strength. There's the character who feels like she is the most beautiful one and everybody sort of looks to her as like the example. So she creates flowers and stuff like that. There's a character who's like the gossip. She hears everybody. She has super hearing and so on. There's a lot of, they have like an exposition song at the beginning of this film. It sort of like lays out very quickly, like, okay, here are all the characters. Here's what they can do. They get these powers from like a candle, and the idea is that years earlier, the matriarch of the family, the abuela, she had an experience where her husband died trying to protect them from people who were invading their village. They created this place called Encanto to protect the village people who were escaping, and the central casita with all the magic sort of just like protects everybody. So like the reason that they're safe in this place is because they have magical powers, they can protect everyone, and that's like the general idea. This house is huge. It's kind of like Hogwarts, and like everybody has their room is like an entire tower, but it's magical. It's really cool stuff. Now, the film, though, centers around a character named Mirabelle, and she's voiced by Stephanie Beatrice. She's one of the younger members of the family, and as the movie begins, we find out she's the only member of the family who doesn't have a power, or they call it like a special gift. They come to the day where I think you have to be a certain age, you receive the gift, and she's expecting, something great. She doesn't get anything. And that's how the movie begins. We sort of fast forward and we check in on her, and it's like the movie is sort of like, what if you were the only member in your family who didn't have this like obvious magical power? How would you deal with that? What would happen if it felt like the family was sort of like blaming you for everything? It's a simple movie. It is a movie that is absolutely sprawling with imagery and colors and a dedication to the art and culture of Colombia, at least rural Colombia. And it was directed by Jared Bush and Byron Howard, who've worked on films like Zootopia and Tangled. It is a film that kind of reminds a little bit of Moana in some ways. It has the music by two people, actually. The composition is by Jermaine Franco. However, the songs were written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I mean, first off, we got to say Lin-Manuel Miranda, is this the hardest working man in Hollywood this year? That I feel like every day it's like everything he has like his hands on. So there was a little bit of that of like, okay, we got another thing from Lin-Manuel. Okay. And that said, Will Ashton, after watching Encanto, you watched it kind of after the initial hype. I saw it a few weeks ago. I remember it quite well. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I thought the music was really good, and I cried a lot during this movie. I cried so much during this movie, probably more than I cried during Coco, although it's pretty close. But what about you, Will? I mean, I think that like when it comes to Disney animated films, you tend to be a person who respects them and appreciates them. I don't know if there are any that have come out recently that affected you in a very specific way, right?
The one that probably the two that affected me the most of late were probably Tangled and Moana. Just talking about the animated section, like you said,
Okay.
and keeping it focused to outside of Pixar and all that, all their different divisions. But yeah, I really, really like Moana, and I like Tangled even more. I like Zootopia. I thought the central metaphor of it was a little muddy, but
We agree on that.
Yeah.
I have Will, have we never talked about Zootopia?
We talked about it a little bit, but not in depth.
I always felt like Zootopia, and people love that movie, and I think it's really good. I really enjoyed it as well, but that was not my favorite Disney movie of that year. I thought Moana was much better. Maybe we did talk about this actually. It's coming back to me.
I think we talked about it on your previous podcast, Now Conspiring, but I don't know if we talked about it on Cinemaholics.
Moana, I genuinely like, even with this movie, Moana is like the only Disney film of like the last. I also, Tangled is up there for me as well. I think I like Moana more than Tangled, but they're both in like a different level.
Sure. And I also really like Wreck-It Ralph as well.
Yes, Wreck-It Ralph is the other one that I think it was like, until Moana came along, I was like, Wreck-It Ralph is the best Disney film we've gotten in a long time. Also, Tangled was up there. I think those are the three Disney films we've gotten that have been like fantastic, like must see. This is Disney at its best, like rivaling the Disney Renaissance, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think Frozen obviously is the big one in terms of cultural impact. Good movie. Yeah, I've seen it twice. Good. I think it didn't work as well for me the second time. Maybe it's just because I was getting a little tired of it culturally, but I think it's a good film. The more you watch it, the more you realize that it had a pretty messy production. Like you can kind of just see the steam, the stems of it kind of crack if you pay attention to it. But I think it works. It's a very charming, sweet movie. And
Frozen, we should say, like, before like the mega hype came in, Frozen was really cool. Like it was like a movie that I remember watching in the theater, and like nobody saw it coming, And I remember being like, "This is a really good Disney movie." But then it became so popular and like overhyped that I think that it kind of lost some of that magic.
Yeah, well, especially because the marketing for Frozen was pretty bad. I remember it was just like kind of obnoxious, and it was just like, I don't know about this. It was
played up like a cartoon. It wasn't played up like a princess movie.
But I mean, Frozen 1 good. Frozen 2 not as good, but we're kind of in the minority on that one, I guess. I know you weren't as crazy about that.
I don't know. I feel like when it first came out, people were like, Frozen 2, awesome. I feel like people have come around on our side where have been like, oh, actually, it wasn't that great. I think.
I don't know. I mean, I don't see people talking about Frozen 2 that much, so I feel like that kind of proves that it was fairly mediocre. Kiss of death. But
are people still singing Into the Unknown? Like, no,
not in my apartment, at least.
I was just at Disneyland. Like, nobody cared about Frozen there. That movie came out 2 years ago. I'm just saying.
I mean, you were saying at Disneyland people weren't even caring about Eternals. That was in theaters that week.
That's true.
So
did I talk about it on the show? Where literally, like,
no, you got to talk about that though. That's
literally,
a great story.
Brian, the guy who plays Brian Tyree Henry, comes out and is like, like, I'm an Eternal. And like, we were waiting in line for the web slingers ride for like the Spider-Man, whatever. And like, nobody cared. It was so sad, Will. Like the look on the guy's face where he's like, I'm an Eternal. I'm in the movie. And people were just like, what? Like the movie had been out for like 2.5 weeks, I think at that point. Right. It was,
if that, it was sad. Or at least the way you describe it is pretty sad. But anyway, like Disney, I never answered your question about how I felt about Encanto, so I'll do that now. Good movie. I think for me, like, if Moana is like A-level modern Disney, I like, this is fantastic. I think like an instant classic from the Mouse House. And I think, and I'm in the minority on this one, but I think if Raya and the Last Dragon is like C-level Disney, where it's kind of messy and it kind of has some of the qualities of a Disney movie I don't particularly care for, but not an awful movie or anything. I don't think it comes together pretty well. But this one, I think it's good, very sweet. I think it's very inspired, very heartfelt. I like the music a lot. I really like the lead vocal performance from Stephanie Beatrix. I think she's so good. Really, really.
She's in perfect sync with the character. I was really impressed.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really impressive vocal performance to the point where I was trying to figure out, I was like, is this Stephanie Beatrice? I was thinking, like, is this like a voice actress I'm just not placing? But yeah, she really, because I don't think she's done a lot of voice acting before this. I could be wrong, but
I don't think so. But she should.
Yeah,
it's really good. I mean, we saw her in The Heights earlier this year. Obviously not a voice acting performance, but like we've seen her kind of break out of like her Brooklyn Nine-Nine persona into more stuff, and I think she has a lot to offer in general.
Yeah. Well, also in The Heights, another Lin-Manuel Miranda production, and in that respect,
and I mean, certainly 12 if you want to go back even further with her.
Sure, but I think if we're talking Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think I'd put this above Tick Tick Boom and Vivo, especially, but probably on par with maybe In the Heights, and not as good as Moana. But I think I
basically agree with that. Oh, sorry, Lego Movie 2. She voiced a character in that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was the alien in that.
Yeah, General Sweet Mayhem.
Yeah, she was actually. Yeah, I actually remember her giving a pretty good vocal performance in that as well. Very dryly funny in that. But yeah, I guess where I disagree is that I feel I've seen this movie today and I'm a few hours removed from it and I'm not really thinking about it that much. I feel it's unfortunately kind of not mediocre, but like kind of forgettable in terms of the story. Like I think it's very well done. And I think it's heartfelt and I like the animation. I like how cartoony it is. Like you said, it kind of evokes some of the cartoonishness of something like Emperor's New Groove, just in terms of the house and like the different superhero antics of it. But at the same time, I just don't, it's something about it doesn't click emotionally as much as I think Disney's other better films that we mentioned. But at the same time, I think it does produce that Disney magic that people want. It's, it's easy to get swept into it. The music, I think, is all around pretty good. And it's a nice, colorful, sweet movie, like you mentioned. But at the same time, something about it isn't hitting me as hard as it's hitting you and a few other critics I've talked to.
Sure. I've come across plenty of other critics who have not loved this movie. And I think that one of the reasons they don't like it is because I think there is this sort of like fondness, this nostalgia for, man, let's get another good Disney villain. It's been a while, right? Like we had like the Cruella live action, but in terms of like the animated films, and I agree with this to some extent, there's been sort of a lack of like really good conflict coming from a strong villain. I think the last really good Disney villain probably was not from Disney Animation, but from Pixar. And that was probably Ernesto de la Cruz from Coco, and a really good Disney villain. And I think that in terms of like recent animated films, like if you're looking at Raya and the Last Dragon, if you're looking at Frozen 2, there's been this trend from Disney to sort of like have sort of like faceless, sort of like non-committal villains, you know what I mean? Like a horde of, even Moana had this to an extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like the villain in that film was sort of like a force of nature and ended up not really being like an antagonistic force. It was just something that Moana had a sort of like, that's like my only real criticism of Moana was like, I thought that the conflict in the very end of the third act was like not great, even though I think Moana is really, really good. And I think the main reason it's really, really good is the music is fantastic. And I think that, Owai Corvallo, if I'm pronouncing that right, her vocal performance was tremendously good in that film. And I thought that, I think that was Lin-Manuel Miranda before he's been overworked like we're seeing right now, where even in Encanto, I think that the music is good here. There's only one song here that I think is on the level of Moana, in my opinion. And I felt the same way. Like, that's better than Vivo. Vivo didn't have anything like that I thought was really good music-wise. Just
it
sort
marches
of passable
to the beat of its own drum.
I think that song is still stuck in your head. But no, like I think that I think this movie, it's like where I agree with you is that like Moana is like the movie, like really high up there. It's up there with Tangled, obviously. This movie's more in the B level. I think it's in the higher B level. I think that's where we disagree. I think Raya is like in the lower B level for sure. Even though I appreciate that movie in a lot of different ways. I think where Encanto got me, and I think the reason I had such an emotional like attack from this movie is the message. I think the message is brilliant, and I really appreciate the fact that it didn't have this external villain coming in and creating the conflict. The conflict really comes down to this family trying to stay together, and the villain is really the main character feeling like they're going to be the villain. I think if you had introduced like a mustache twirling, we got to fight this bad guy off, I think it would have distracted away from the conflict within Mirabelle herself. I love this character, and I love the narrative around how she feels so out of place in her family. Like, even thinking about it, like, chokes me up a little bit. I certainly watched this movie at a good time in my life, at a fitting time in my life, where, especially as a Puerto Rican man, Latina culture is so fascinating. Colombian, Puerto Rican, Mexican, wherever you call home, whatever you call your heritage, there are very universal themes between how families operate. The idea of like everybody living in this casita and feeling at home, but also feeling like if you do the wrong thing, if you don't abide by the family code, if you're the black sheep and the outcast, you end up like Mirabelle. You end up like Bruno. That's the stuff that kicked the shit out of me. Like, honestly, like it's so profoundly personal to, I think, like the way that I grew up, the way that my family operates, the way that extended cousins and everything operates. It's really authentic. And I have some criticisms of the film, very minor, but in terms of the messaging and like the story of this movie, I was 100% like in this movie and just swallowing this movie whole. I think it's just super lovely. And even if we're just talking about the visuals and everything, like the dedication to, I think, it's obviously like a timeless kind of aesthetic that they're going for. They're not trying to date themselves, but I think that they struck a nice balance, because I think Coco was cool because like that was in Mexico, but that was like, you spend some time in the sort of like heightened, like, Mexico City kind of environment that is kind of romanticized. And I appreciated that. It was a little bit of like, let's not like focus in on like the crime and, all of the stereotypes that we get from movies like Sicario 2, you know what I mean? And let's just sort of like show like life as, like we would show like Brooklyn. And how many New York movies have we seen, where Brooklyn is like this fantastical place where like you can just sort of walk down the street at 2 a.m. and it's fine. You know what I'm saying? And I think Encanto is kind of like that same sort of thing, Disney-fied. Obviously, it's not a film with a lot of teeth, but it's a film that I think with like so much heart, it's dripping. And I want to say, Will, when Moana first came out, I don't know about you, but I remember people were being like, it's not that great. Whatever. And I remember being like, no, this is actually really good. And I think like over time, people were like, actually, okay, yeah, Moana was good, whatever. Like, I think we're now at a point where we recognize that film was a lot better than people were giving it credit for. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with Encanto, because I don't think Encanto is as good, but I do think that like a lot of the criticisms we're seeing are a little bit knee-jerk, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that was kind of something that happened with Coco to some extent as well. People were kind of dismissive, I felt, of Coco, but even though I think that did win the Oscar. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with anything you said there. I guess I wish I just had as strong as an emotional reaction to it as you did. But I certainly was taken by it, charmed by it, to be sure. Yeah, so it was a good time. Maybe, like you said, maybe over time I'll grow like this one even more.
It's such a specific film. Like, I definitely don't expect like everybody to get as much out of it as I do. But I think one of the things I really liked about it was how, first of all, the character that they bring in with Bruno, I think was fantastic. I loved how John Leguizamo came into this, because I think the movie sort of sets up Bruno a certain way and he kind of surprises, right? But what did you think of that?
Of Bruno's character, or the way they introduced him into the story?
Both.
The character I liked. I mean, it kind of felt a bit late in the game as far as how they presented his character, but yeah, I mean, I didn't find it to be unexpected, I guess, but it seems like you disagree.
I think like I was expecting a subversion, but I wasn't expecting the film to do exactly what it did, if that makes any sense. So I don't know. It's hard to say without getting into like more spoilery territory. The critical consensus I'm getting is that like, okay, this movie, like I'm seeing a lot of like, this is good. I'm seeing some, it's great. I'm not seeing a lot of people being like, oh, it's terrible or anything like that. But right. I do sort of get this feeling that because it wasn't a big box office hit, I think that like it made money, like for sure. It's like decently well.
Yeah. I think it certainly did well worldwide. Like I think it's at 70 million right now, right?
Yeah, it's just it kind of underperformed in some key ways, but it's made 71 million worldwide so far, which is good. But it still has a long way to go because it's a film that needs to make like at least 300 to 400 million in order to be a box office success.
Right.
Which is going to be difficult at this point. Like I think that it needed to make at least 10 to 15 million more, I think, for the box office narrative to come in, if that makes sense.
Well, it seems like the conversation is muted, but it's not like with Raya and the Last Dragon where people are doing doomsday talk box office wise, like the weekend it came out.
Sure.
Like it was like people are like, oh God, this is really underperforming. What's going on? And I'm not really getting that with Encanto, but I am getting the sense that like people aren't like a buzz about it. Like it's still kind of a cooler response for a Disney movie, at least.
That's what's worrying me. I think that it's front loaded. I think that based on the numbers that I'm seeing and the reaction overall is that it came out in theaters and the people who wanted to see it saw it, but it's just not like reaching people like in the general public. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it just plummets from here on out and people are like not talking about the film at all for the holiday season. And that's why I'm a little skeptical about its best animated film chances, because even a film like Luca was available on Disney Plus. And I remember way more conversations happening about Luca for at least a month when that film came out this past summer compared to this one. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Luca was, in my opinion, it's a better film. I think that it's a more interesting film. And I hate to say that because, like, you know, I'd love for the better film to be one that speaks more closely to my community, but whatever, like, truth is truth for me. But Luca, in that sense, was a film that it had a lot to chew on, surprisingly. I mean, that was also a film that people were saying was a little bit simple, but it had lasting power because people were talking about that film. They were talking about the coming out sort of subtext that was in that movie, right? Whereas with this movie, there's less of that.
I don't know. I'm getting that conversation though with this film. Are you not?
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not really catching up on this. What are you saying?
No, I mean I've heard some people say that that's maybe not what the filmmakers intended, but it seems to be a way to approach the narrative. At least I've seen like one or two people talk about that with this film. But I think
that would be great. But I genuinely have not seen any of that, and I think that it's probably not as pronounced as Luca.
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, I think with Luca, like even though the filmmakers have been like that was not our intention, it's kind of like, but was it not? Like, come on, like don't. You can be honest with us. Like you can tell us.
Sure.
Like it's okay. Right.
I think what worries me though is that I'm not sure what it was that got Coco to be as big of a success as it was. I mean, obviously it was a critical success. Box office wise, I mean, it's not like the best Pixar performer or anything like that, but it had mainstream appeal. People still reference the film. People meme the film at this point. I mean, it made a lot of money. It made like, I don't think it made $1 billion, but it made like at least 800 million worldwide, which is like amazing, right? For a film. Like, I think that it definitely defied expectations of what a Latin American film could do, like a film that was based on Latin American culture. Because if you look at other films like The Book of Life, that film didn't even break 100 million, which, you know, I just think is like an unfortunate thing.
Right.
And
yeah. Because I remember when Coco came out, people were like, oh, didn't we do this already with Book of Henry? But I don't even hear people talk about Book of Henry anymore unless when you bring it up now. Sorry, Book of Life.
Book of Henry was the Colin Trevorrow.
Way different. Yeah, way different film. Sorry, way different film.
No, you're 100% correct. I remember for years, I mean, like when Coco was coming up, people couldn't shut up about, oh, it's the Book of Life. It's like, okay, just relax. You can have more than one film about the Day of the Dead. The films literally are so different from each other. It's ridiculous. But people were just obviously going for the easy joke. They just wanted to have the YouTube comment of the day, whatever it was. But no, all that said, I think Encanto, by comparison, is not going to be as big of a box office hit. I think that though, I think honestly, like if you look at the two trailers, Coco seems like an easier sell. I hate to say, like, does that make sense? Like, I think that in Encanto, you have this movie where it's like people with powers, but they're kind of in one location the entire time. It's Colombia. It kind of looks like, I'm not saying this as a negative, but I do think the film kind of looks not that like, what's the word? Like not visceral, but like everyone's kind of dressed super nice. There's not a lot of obvious conflict. The hook of it isn't super original if you're into anime. If you like things like My Hero Academia and Black Clover, like we've gotten stuff like this before. It's like you're the only person who doesn't have power. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I've heard, I think a couple comparisons to Steven Universe as well, but I don't watch that show, so I don't know if that's online.
I haven't seen Steven Universe, but I'm kind of aware with a few things from that show, so like I think that tracks.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that like people just aren't. I don't think that Encanto has like an obvious hook that like will get people in the door. I think that like if a lot of people watched it, most people would really like it, but I don't think a lot of people are convinced they would like it. Right? That's kind of like my impression.
So. I don't know. I've always, not always, but I feel like of late, Disney has been not great about marketing their movies, which is kind of weird because they're like the biggest company in the world. But like, I always kind of get the sense that their marketing doesn't always do their film a service. Like they either give away too much of the plot or like they like focus on like the like things that they believe are kind of cutesy or, you know, something that would like, you know, appeal to the younger audiences, but not really talk much about the story or character. And this one, I think they just gave away too much of the plot in the trailer and just didn't. I just remember seeing the trailer a lot and being like, well, I feel like I've just seen the movie already. And you know, if I'm seeing that trailer a bunch of times, yeah, I don't know. The trailer gives away a lot, like more than I would have given away personally in terms of the plot. But no, I mean, I do agree with you in that. Like, I think this is probably more of a personal film than some people are maybe expecting or giving it credit. I don't know if you mentioned Shirese Castro Smith is like a co-director and co-writer of the film, and I imagine it's a more personal project with her involved. Even though I feel like she's kind of her involvement is getting overlooked compared to Jared Bush and Brian, or is it Brian Howard? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Byron Howard.
Byron Howard.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is a persistent issue with Disney and Pixar. And first of all, yes, you're right. She co-wrote the film with Jared Bush. She has a story credit, but the story credits include Lin-Manuel Miranda because I think he was one of the original like, hey, like we should do a film. It's kind of like based here and you know very early goings. But I think Disney keeps falling into this consultant sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was saying, I think Lin-Manuel was getting the ball rolling on the film, right? Like I remember early on, like in 2016 or whatever, he was like, "Hey, you know, Moana did great. Let's do another thing." And then that's kind of what started the conversation with Encanto.
Yes, and I think with this movie, I think what ended up happening is that it's what we saw with Soul. You know, where they bring in somebody and they say like, "Oh, you're the co-director." Right. And like, it's almost, to me, it's feeling a little bit like they're trying to cover their bases of like, we have two white directors. It's a Latine film. So we got to kind of have a Latine person here, you know, I don't want to say that as like, I'm assuming or anything like that. It looks bad to me. It kind of reminds me of the way that like Disney movies and Marvel movies in general have been like, we are doing representation for the LGBT community by doing like the bare minimum, by doing these things that are just sort of like, I don't know, it just feels like pandering. And I don't think that's equivalent to this because it does seem like Shirese Castro Smith had a lot of input here. Mm-hmm. But my main point is that like when it comes time to who gets the Oscar, right, it's not going to be her. It's going to be those two guys, right?
Yeah. Because I was thinking about that. Like I really like Soul. Yeah. But I remember when that won the Oscar, it was like Pete Docter was on the stage.
Exactly.
And was he the only one on stage? Or,
and like to me, that was like ridiculous. Like, yeah. Kim Power should have been up there. And I think that he is one of the key reasons, I think, based on everything I know about the production of Soul, why that film was successful, why that film struck the chord that it did, was because he wasn't just a consultant. He came in and he really helped round that film out like a director does. And I think that they have these weird rules, and I don't blame Pixar and Disney for it 100%. I do think it also comes a lot down to the DGA and how a lot of these rules function, and they're kind of boxed in. But I do think that they're sort of benefiting from the complication, if that makes sense, and not properly giving due to these creative voices that they're bringing in to lend credibility to these movies that they're making, that I'm glad they're making. And I appreciate the effort, and I'm not trying to be a pill, but I just wish that people would get more recognition for the hard work that they're doing. That's all.
No, I mean, I get it, though, because it's with anything with Disney now, I feel like it's baby steps, especially in terms of sure. LGBT representation. They've been kind of just oh, we're going to have our 50th first gay character, and he's going to have a dance with this guy, so that means he's gay. But it's
we did get Eternals.
That's
so baby steps, Eternals.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Baby
we
steps.
Actually had a functioning, happy,
But it just kind of seems like they want the credit as often as possible, but they take very small steps to get towards progress. Which
they want brownie points, but they're giving us brownie flavored water. It's
it's every time they take a step, they're kind of waiting for an applause to happen. Which you know, it's kind of frustrating, but it's a big corporation.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating, especially because you don't want to be super negative and critical about it, because it's you understand progress is a process, and you can't expect instant gratification. But it does come down to the way that they're handling it and being a little bit having their cake and eating it too, I guess.
That, and I also just think it's them trying to capitalize on people's short-term memory of being they'll forget that this movie supposedly had our first gay character or whatever, and it's I don't know. I get cynical about these type of things, but
that said, Encanto doesn't have any gay characters, if I recall. At least
not
none that
directly,
are
at least.
Gay.
Yeah, right. So I mean, sorry.
If I had any negatives on this movie, it would probably be there's the romance in the movie feels a little bit forced. That they kind of do. There's this love triangle thing I didn't care about. I think some of the characters, I think the last 10 minutes were a little bit too tidy, a little bit too glossy, a little bit too Parks and Rec, which I really like Parks and Rec.
Sure.
But there's a little bit of that, everything's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Schmaltz,
Right. Well, the romance thing doesn't bother me as much because it's such a secondary thing in the plot that I feel it's
pretty minor.
It's pretty minor, so it didn't bother me as much. For me though, I think it's kind of annoying that only two of the family members seem to be, or I guess three of the family members seem to be developed outside of their superpowers. I felt there's kind of more opportunity there to explore them as people, but I guess there's only so much time in a plot like this one. And most of them get a song, so I guess that's good.
Yeah. It's not a short movie, but it's not a long movie. I think it's a decent length. It comes in, it does its thing, it gets out, it's pretty efficient. I think that, this movie makes a lot of right moves in terms of what it chooses to focus on and what it doesn't. I think Mirabelle is the reason to watch this film. She's awesome. She's a really cool character. And I think that she's really fun to follow. You connect with her pretty quickly. I think that there were a few missing ingredients that I think could have made this film really stand out. I think that could have made this film feel more alive, and it already feels pretty alive. I think that that's kind of represented kind of interestingly by the music. I think that some of the music in this movie is fantastic. I think Tu Oruguitas is a just beautiful song. It's so well written. It's so well performed. That was the song during this movie, third act, that's what reduced me to just weeping and sobbing in the theater, to the point where I was literally having to adjust my eyes with my mask and all this stuff, because I didn't want to come out of the theater all puffy and red-eyed for the publicist. I have a reputation to protect, of course. But no, that song had me destroyed. The other songs before that, I know people really like the We Don't Talk About Bruno. It's a fun song, you have the one with Louisa. The music is good in this movie. Like I think good. Some of it's good. Some of it's okay.
I think
one song is great.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I think what I find most impressive about the music is just how layered it is, considering like there's often like 2 or 3 different people singing at once, but it doesn't feel like too congested. I don't have enough music terminology to describe it, but I think from a producing standpoint, that's pretty impressive in terms of songwriting and sound layering and all that.
Which song are you referring to there? Because I'm not thinking
one. The Bruno song for sure. Yeah, okay. Bruno for sure. There's at least 1 or 2 others I felt like there was like a lot of layering involved, but I can't remember the song's titles.
The song I don't like as much as the first one because it's too frenzied, and I bet I would probably like it slightly more the second time. I think it was just like they treat the song as like we got to get all the exposition out of like everybody's powers, and they do a lot of repetition, which is nice because it's like you went too fast. Like I don't. Who is this? Your cousin? What? The sibling of the? I can't. But then like they do repeat it. But I think that it was so manic that it lost some of the power for me. And I don't know, it's not a bad song at all. And I think that it functions well within like the plot, but it wasn't a song that stuck. Like I can't remember the song, right? Like coming out of this movie, the only song that I was humming and really was like thinking about, it actually wasn't We Don't Talk About Bruno, but it was actually the like Louisa song that she has. And like, because I thought that was like a song that had a really strong purpose. And then also of course, Tu Oreguitas, which is like, just, I can't even keep talking about it. I'm going to start crying in front of Will Ashton. I can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that. You have a reputation with me to keep.
I don't want to get bullied.
Yeah. But no, I agree that like, when I think about Moana, there are like at least 2 or 3 songs that I can remember pretty instantly. And with this film, they kind of blur together a little bit more for me. So it's not as distinct a soundtrack as some of Lin-Manuel Miranda's other work, especially for Disney. But at the same time, I do think the songs are proficient and well done. Certainly better than I felt they were compared to his work with, say, Vivo. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good soundtrack for sure. I mean, I'd be curious to listen back to it, but I don't think there's any like stone cold bangers like there were on the Moana soundtrack.
Yeah, there's such good songs. Like there are 4 songs on there that just they rule. Like they're so good. Like I can still sing them. Like I remember the lyrics. Like "You're Welcome," of course, is like the big one. Everyone's like, "Yeah, you're welcome." You know, "How Far I Go" is like. Yeah, Shiny is the one that it's like, you know, the real fans are like, yeah, Shiny is where you come. And I like We Know the Way. Like We Know the Way is like a really good one. And, you know, I think even the opening one, it's like it's a simpler song, but it's like Where You Are, you know, like a nice little like this. We get to see Moana as a kid and growing up. It's all so good. Compared to this movie, I think that it just stands out more. Like I remember when Moana came out, I had to keep listening to the soundtrack over and over again because there was so much to discover. With this movie, there are a couple songs like that, but you know, it just doesn't fully hit. But I'm super happy with this song or this movie. I think that it's just so solid. And I don't think it has any like major faults. Even though I would like to see a Disney film sort of do something more subversive with Disney villainy. And like, I'm not saying like, I'm disappointed that this film didn't have a villain. I think that it's just that, I don't know, the third act was kind of missing something for me. I'm not sure what it was. I don't think a villain would have solved it. But I do think that there was something sort of like, I don't know, wanting from that third act. Like it just kind of just bad stuff happens and then it ends. And then I don't know, like the structure of it didn't quite work for me 100%. It worked for me a little, not a lot. But I don't know. I feel like Disney is on the precipice of maybe reinventing what they do with this sort of thing. Like we don't have to go back to having like Scar, you know, like that's fine. We don't have to always have stuff like that, but like, I don't know, we need something.
Yeah. I guess for me, it wasn't so much the third act that bugged me. It was more the second, I guess, because the quest element felt a little underbaked. Like it just kind of, It didn't have the same enthusiasm, I guess, for me as the family elements and the, it's not that it was like poorly done or anything. That's the thing for me is that like nothing I can think about the film is like, oh, like that was terrible or oh, that didn't work. It's just like, yeah, I think almost all of it works and it's all proficient. And I think it's all, like I said, very charming and sweet and even at times very emotional. But yeah, just like when I think back on like some Disney classics, I don't think this one quite reaches those benchmarks. But it's certainly a good film, and even a year like this where I'm not quite as fond as the animated films, I think this is one of the better ones to come out of the crop. So it's well worth watching.
I think that 2021. I already said it earlier in the show. I think it's a great film, great year for animated films. Just so many good ones. Like I don't think that there have been some of the best animated films of all time that have come out this year, but a couple that I would say are like in the upper echelon. And if you're also getting, I don't know, in a year where you're getting films like Encanto and Raya and the Last Dragon and Cryptozoa and Mitchell's versus the Machines and Luca and it's just like, and Flea, and then we also had Where's Anne Frank, Summit of the Gods, which I just watched earlier this week. It's just a great year for animated films. That's not even counting like anime that's been coming out lately that's been really solid. So I don't know. I think if you're an animation nerd, I think that 2021 has been very good to you. But I know, Will, you're not quite as you're not up there with me, but that's okay.
No, I was trying to think back on like what was the last like animation year that I really, really liked. The one that comes to mind for me is 2009. I don't know if you remember, like there was like Fantastic Mr. Fox, Mary and Max,
so far ago.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Up. Just a lot of really good stuff. That Princess of the Frog was a good movie too.
I think you're undercounting 2016. I'd say I agree with you, but I think 2016 was a really good year too. There you have Kubo and the Two Strings.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, 2016. That year, you're all right. That was a good year.
Yeah, Moana, Zootopia. I think we had a Song of the Sea.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was I think a year or two before that. I think that was 2014, right?
Maybe I'm confusing with something else.
I was going to make the joke that
was 2014.
No, I thought that was like 2013.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Let me song.
But hey, I didn't love Sausage Party. But
I was just about to make that joke, but then you're distracting me with Song of the Sea, which is 2014. I just double checked it.
But no, we also had Red Turtle, My Life as a Zucchini. I mean, there was really good stuff that year.
Yeah. My Life as a Zucchini. That's how do you pronounce her name? Petite Maman filmmaker.
Who? What?
The filmmaker behind Petite Maman. I can never.
Ma Vie de Courgette?
No, like
the director?
Yeah.
Oh, Claude Barras.
Maybe it's not. I was thinking of Sicilian. I just don't know how to pronounce her name, but she wrote "My Life is a Zucchini." So that's what I was trying to say.
Oh, are you talking about Celine Sciamma?
Yeah, she wrote "My Life is a Zucchini."
Well, she co-wrote it.
Right.
I think a bunch of people co-wrote that film.
Probably.
I'd have to look it up, but anyway, I think that film has a large screenplay credit. But okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Confusing.
That was a long tangent. Anyway, Encanto, good movie.
Encanto, good movie. All right, what do you think it got on Rotten Tomatoes? The critical score. 132 reviews have been counted. The tomato meter, I feel like it's kind of settled at this point, but it's obviously like not a lot of reviews have come out yet, so it could fluctuate. But what do you think it's at right now?
I'm gonna say 92%.
You're exactly right, Will Ashton. Are you cheating?
Nope.
Are you?
I was too busy looking up My Life's Zucchini to see the Rotten Tomatoes score for.
Okay, all right. That's impressive. You got it exactly right. 92%. Very high.
Audience score, I have no idea, but I'm going to take a shot.
Okay. We have 1,000 plus verified ratings, which is a lot for a theatrical exclusive these days.
I'm going to be a little bit lower, though. For some reason, I feel like based on the past couple times we've done this game, it seems like the audience ended up being higher than the critics. But my gut is saying 86%.
You should have gone with your initial, because it's 93%. It's a little higher.
93. A little bit. Only a
They're
little bit.
They're very close. 92, 93. Audiences and critics are shaking hands.
Yeah, critics and audiences getting along. Mass hysteria.
High-fiving outside the theaters right now. Yeah, no, Encanto is doing really, really well with critics and audiences. That's why, genuinely, I think that's a big reason why I think it has a little bit more lasting power, even if it doesn't have a lot of box office power. What do you think the cinema score is? Cinema score is graded between an A+ to an F. But what do you think it is for this one?
My initial grade was B+, but I'm feeling based on the critics and audience score, it's going to be an A-.
It's good that you're adapting, but you're not adapting enough. It has an average grade of A, which is what I would have guessed. I think that this is I think this is one of those films. It's lovely. I think people watched the trailer for this movie and they were like, I don't know. I don't care. But like when they actually watched the movie, you're like, you know what? That was cool, man. That was a good time. I like that. I liked Encanto. Like, I think that's what's like probably happening. People are like, you know what? I give the movie an A. I think that's what's happening right there. But okay, that's Encanto. It is 109 minutes long, a little bit longer than I thought. To me, it felt like a pretty short film. 109 is not, long or anything, but that's still pretty short.
Did you get the short film before it?
I did. Really good short film. Probably going to win.
I like the short
Oscar.
film. You think so? Yeah, I was wondering if it would, but I mean, it'll certainly probably get nominated. But
yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see. I imagine it's computer rendered 2D animation, but it was just nice to see 2D animation.
Yeah, good
from
hybrid.
Disney again.
Yeah,
yeah.
You can tell that it has some tech behind it, which it enhances the story. Which is why I think that it's between this one and Us Again. I think it was the other one, right, where it played before Raya, and I think I prefer that one a little bit more. But this one feels a little bit more of like it's recent, and I don't know, the handle. I don't know. I could see it kind of overshadowing. Who knows?
It's also fresher in the Academy's mind, I guess.
That's what I'm saying, we'll see.
But I feel like I mean, at least as far as like presenting it before Encanto, I feel like it complemented the film. Like the themes were pretty similar, and like what I was trying to say was, as opposed to like
it really did.
Us Again. It's a really nice, charming short film, but I don't think that says anything that's being commented on in Raya and the Last Dragon. So
it's a little too hetero for Raya, if we're being honest.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess so.
I couldn't resist.
Sure, but I just mean that like this, like you watch like this short film and you watch Encanto, and it's like, oh, okay, like they're not the same plot, but they're talking about similar things in in interesting ways, and yeah, exactly, yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
Agreed. Well, that's Encanto. Definitely check it out. If it's safe for you to check out in theaters right now, it's playing wide release. However, we get it. Omicron, it's a thing. It'll be on Disney Plus eventually if you want to wait. But I definitely hope that people check it out. I think that it is one of those things. Like as more people see it, I think it'll get a better reputation if it doesn't already have that already. All right, our next film is a movie that you can watch right now on HBO Max. Yeah, I think this is our first Christmas movie that we're talking about on the show. Is that the case this year?
That can't be true. This year, probably. But
2021. Yeah, we talked about... No. Sorry. I spoke ahead. But no, for this holiday season. Have we talked about a Christmas film yet?
Not that I can recall. But have we gotten any Christmas movies this year yet?
Well, maybe not an overt... We watched like Green Knight. That's a Christmas movie in its own way.
Sure.
But I mean like overtly, like straight up, like this is marketed. This is supposed to be like watching with your family during Christmas. Yeah.
Right. It has Christmas in the title even.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah.
I haven't watched a lot of Christmas movies yet this year so far. That's going to change soon. Going to be seeing A Boy Called Christmas probably at some point. Christmas Again. The Disney Channel, whatever.
Oh yeah. You were. Should we talk about that?
Nah, it would take too long to explain the joke behind.
Sure.
It. But
fair enough.
This is on HBO Max. It's called 8-Bit Christmas, and this is a movie where we begin the film with Neil Patrick Harris, and he's with his daughter, who is played by Sophia Reed Ganser. And she's like, I want a phone for Christmas. And he's like, you don't understand what we went through in the 80s. And she's like, oh, geez, this is going to be like a Stranger Things sort of thing. Are we going to have like an 80s nostalgia trip? And he's like, you bet. This movie suddenly sort of nosedives. into being kind of a semi-modern take on A Christmas Story, where A Christmas Story was a film that came out that was an 80s film, right? Early 80s? Am I right about that?
I believe so. I'll double check.
I'm pretty sure A Christmas Story is a 1980s film. The fact that I don't know that for sure is kind of embarrassing, I guess, but I want to say it is.
83, yeah.
83. Okay, yeah. Early 80s. I was there. I wouldn't have been like too surprised if it was like 79, 78. But anyway, so Christmas Story, like the plot of that film is that like you have Ralphie, of course, who's like, he wants to get it's an 80s film, but he's like thinking back on when he was a kid in the 1950s and when he wanted a BB gun more than anything. And, he has this Christmas adventure, right? That's the magic of A Christmas Story.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's like the fact that he wants a BB gun is, the plot, but it's not the core of the movie.
Exactly.
It's more about like having this kind of like bittersweet, nostalgic look at his childhood, but also recognizing that like things were kind of messed up at that time in American history, but it's also kind of glorified at the same time. And, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the parents. I think is very amusing in that film. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I felt like that's a richer film than 8-Bit Christmas. So,
it is.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, 8-Bit Christmas is trying. It's kind of splitting the difference between A Christmas Story and another holiday film that a lot of people love to revisit called Jingle All the Way, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Where the driving force of that film is like Arnold Schwarzenegger is a dad and he feels like his marriage it's in danger. Like, let's be honest. And his kid, all his kid wants is Turbo Man, and he lies to his kid. He lies to his wife. Is like, I got Turbo Man for our son. Don't you worry about it, because he thinks it's going to be easy to get Turbo Man. And so the whole plot of Jingle All the Way is that like he can't seem to find, like he travels all over the state basically to get this toy. It's actually kind of hilarious. I like that movie, Will Ashton.
It's a very quotable film.
It's a Negroni favorite. We watched it quite a bit growing up. So
yeah. Your wife's cookies are so delicious. Who told you could eat my cookies? I always quote that.
I appreciate the film. The film has a good, like, that is a film with a good third act. And Encanto could learn something from Jingle. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly remember Jingle All the Way has a higher body count than 8-Bit Christmas.
People don't make it out of that movie alive. I'll tell you that much. No, 8-Bit Christmas, it's the same kind of idea, but Neil Patrick Harris is in the modern day. He's actually kind of doing the How I Met Your Mother thing that he was, but he's not Ted Mosby, but he's kind of reflecting back on when he was a kid. And he's talking to his daughter about how when he was a kid in the 1980s, all he really wanted was a Nintendo Entertainment System. Mm-hmm. Right? That's pretty like hip with the kids, right? Well, video games.
Nintendo's, sure.
Nintendo's.
Though you were saying that it seems rather implausible that there would only be one Nintendo in this fairly suburban tri-state area.
That is the driving force of this movie, is that there's only one Nintendo in Chicago, and I think that they're playing it up. I think they are sort of playing it as like, okay, like, we know there's not one, but to him it felt that way, right? Like the stakes were raised, and it does kind of like remind of Christmas Story, how like it was over dramatized, like every little thing. There is an unreliable narrator element to this story, but the basic idea is that Winslow Fegley, who we saw in the movie Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made, a Will Ashton favorite, he plays the younger version of Neil Patrick Harris's character, and he and his group of friends, they just want a Nintendo, and they go through all of these hijinks trying to get it. His dad is played by Steve Zahn, who, is more of a handyman. He's like, you can't get a Nintendo video games. Like, you need to play outside. You don't need video games. And he has a little sister played by Bella Luna Resnick, and she's just sort of, the worst. And then his mother is played by June Diane Raphael, and who I think we've seen her in more TV stuff. I don't know if I've seen her in any film things. I know she's been in films, but I don't know if I ever saw a film.
Sure. One of the co-hosts of How Did This Get Made? the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. The podcast with Jason Mantzoukas. She's married to Paul Scheer, if I'm correct about that.
Yes,
who also does Unspooled. But I think I'm trying to think of a movie she's been in. I think the only movie I'm thinking of is Year One, but man, that was so long ago.
Well, she starred and co-wrote that Sundance movie Ass Backwards. I remember that.
Yeah, that was like 2013. She was in Yes Day and The High Note. She's been in a bunch of stuff. It's coming back to me.
2 movies that I have totally forgotten about.
Your 2 favorite films of the anyway. Abe at Christmas. It's kind of a simple movie, but what did you think? David Cross also shows up in this movie with Ashton, and it's a movie about, sometimes you don't get what you want for Christmas, but that's okay. What do you think?
Actually, David Cross was pretty good in this. I was surprised. He gave a pretty solid performance. As for the movie itself, it's fine. I think it's kind of odd to try to. I think on paper it makes sense to combine A Christmas Story and Jingle All the Way in terms of story. I think in tone it ends up a little bit weird, just because, like you said, like Christmas Story, while it is fairly heightened, it is ultimately more than not a fairly sweet kind of idiosyncratic type of film, whereas Jingle All the Way is so absurdly ballooned in tone and its comedic sensibilities that like this movie kind of goes from like having kind of softer, more tender character beats to having like these fairly wild, outlandish, even sometimes fairly dark comedic bits that I don't think come together in a fairly cohesive way, but I don't think it results in a completely uneven film at the same time. For me, though, I just found it to be a bit by numbers to a fault. Like, I think you can pretty much expect what's going to happen from a film like this, and I think some folks will find that fairly comforting, and I don't want to take that away from them. But for me, I thought it was just kind of, a bit ho-hum. It's, it's fine for what it is. Kind of garish in terms of how it's trying to shield the Nintendo brand and all these other nostalgic properties.
The product placement, I was like, I'm surprised that this wasn't by like Nintendo streaming service or something.
Yeah, it's based on a book. I think it's a semi-autobiographical one, maybe even an autobiographical one. I forget. But
by Kevin Jakubowski, it's called 8-Bit Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, who also wrote the screenplay here. I think the performances are what I find myself most endeared to. I can never remember the kid's name, but Timmy Failure, I think, is actually quite a talented young kid actor.
Winslow Fegley. He is. Yeah.
I think he's really talented, and I'm really excited to see him get more lead roles like this. I think he really carries the film throughout its kind of shambling tone. But I also think Steve Zahn, who, I know he's in White Lotus, but I haven't caught up on that. But I think people kind of take him for granted in terms of like how well he's able to balance comedy and drama. And a movie like this, I think, showcases that pretty well. And you get to see some nice supporting turns from people like you said, like David Cross and like Catherine Greenwood, who I haven't seen in anything in a long, long time. It's okay. That's, I guess, where I land on it ultimately. But where'd you land on it?
It's very nice. Yeah. I'm a fan of Winslow Fegley. He's the younger brother of Oakes Fegley, who we saw in Pete's Dragon and Wonderstruck. And I think he was in other stuff that I don't think I ever actually watched, but he was in other films for sure. That said, though, I think that he does sort of bring it together. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of a wishy-washy little movie. It's very low stakes, but this is one of those movies where I think the ending is actually like way better than anything else in the movie. Like when it ended, I was like, wait, did I just watch a good movie? And
right.
I was like, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it feels a little bit unearned, but at the same time, I feel like the ending is way more impactful than the rest of it. So it's kind of like, this is ending stronger than I anticipated, but at the same time, is this the movie that warrants such an ending? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially on a first viewing. But it's one of those movies, it's easy to like this movie, like it's likable, right? Even if you can kind of look at it and say, like, all right, I can poke holes in it all day. There are entire stretches of this where I was totally checked out, where I was like, I'd rather celebrate Hanukkah, honestly. But, it's fine because every once in a while, the movie sort of transitions into a set piece that is generally kind of fun. I think that there's like a whole thing where they go to the mall and like he gets like, he kind of hypes himself up on playing Nintendo in public. That's such a fun sequence.
Okay.
You didn't like that?
No, I thought you were going to be talking about the retainer scene. Like there's like a chase scene where
no, that's what I'm talking. Like that whole thing,
right?
Like when he like
okay,
the instigation of that and how that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, great.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I thought that was fun.
I think that when the movie kind of like introduces us to his little sister, I know you were probably a little troubled because I was like, she sucks. She's the worst. I can't stand her.
Yeah,
but even she gets a bit of a turn in the film, right?
A little. I don't know. I wasn't quite as harsh on her, I guess, as you were. You were like, wishing ill upon her, and I was like, calm down. She's not even in double digits yet.
I'm just saying they write her so. Anyway, I think this movie's interesting though because like I don't know about you, Will, because like we didn't grow up in the 80s, so like we grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, but we did have those Christmases where we wanted to play video games. I think that is a more modern thing compared to the Christmas Story tradition, where it's like kids of those era. They played BB guns and stuff. Whereas we sort of like, we had GameCube, like for me, Nintendo 64 was like the big thing. PlayStation 1. Like I had Super Nintendo, but I was still young. Like I remember the first system, like gaming system, I just thought about it all the time. I wanted it so badly, was like the GameCube, or the Xbox or something like that, the PS2. And like that, I think translates to this movie where it feels like your whole world. It feels like if you don't get this, like you and your friends are doomed. That stuff I thought was faithfully reimagined here in an interesting way, even if it wasn't like an interesting movie overall.
Sure. I guess for me though, it's like similar to the process of writing. Playing a video game is not an inherently cinematic thing to showcase. So I think the movie kind of has the challenge of presenting that in a cinematic fashion. And sometimes I think it does all right. And other times it didn't really do it for me. But at the same time, I'm no video game fanatic. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you go into this movie and you're like, all right, I'm going to enjoy a Christmas movie, lower your expectations, understand that you're going to watch something that's borrowing a lot. A lot of the best stuff it's getting are from better films. And it knows that. And it's not afraid to lean into that. And I think that the reason that it probably will work for some people more than others is because if you do stick around and you actually watch the ending is surprisingly heartfelt. And it does have like a sort of turn that I think is a good message for anybody, even if you didn't grow up in the 80s.
It's a very basic, predictable message, but it seems to be fairly personal, especially given the screenwriter / author's connection to the text. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's the type of ending that I feel like feels abrupt given the rest of the tone of the film, but it's not an insincere ending, I think.
All of a sudden the movie is like, but what if we were a holiday classic? Would you like us then? And we're like, whoa, hold on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like you're getting ready to get up and like the movie just like starts crying in front of you. It's like, whoa, calm down. Like I thought you were like, right.
What's wrong?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean it definitely traffics in a lot of, I think, unearned nostalgia, but also some, like I appreciate that the movie, it is 80s, but it's not aggressively 80s. Like it's not trying too hard. Do you disagree?
I'm probably going to disagree on that
half
one.
And half. I think that some of it is, some of it isn't.
I mean, a lot of, especially in the first half, it's a lot of like, remember the glove thing? Remember this thing?
That stuff I think did work because they serviced it to the story. I think where it was a little bit more fun with that sort of thing was in the like, oh, it's the 80s. A dog can die. Like there was a little bit more of like, yeah, like it was tough back then. Like, I don't know. It wasn't as like, Napoleon Dynamite as some other films tend to be.
Well, if it was Napoleon Dynamite, it would be a better film. But that's not really what I'm referring to, I guess.
Fair enough. We've never talked about Napoleon Dynamite, you and me, Wash.
Oh, good movie. Good movie.
Yeah, I enjoy it. But, it did sort of set a certain kind of trend that I don't appreciate. But that's a different discussion for another day.
I mean, that's not the movie's fault. But I don't know why we're talking about Napoleon Dynamite when we're talking about 8-Bit Christmas. But
it is weird how we went from that to that.
But yeah, I guess what were we even talking about with 8-Bit Christmas? I lost my train of thought. I was so caught up thinking about Napoleon Dynamite.
Just the 80s of it all, I guess. But it sounds like we're just sort of in the same zone. But we're pricking at each other, trying to find differences.
I mean, I thought some of that humor was cute, but also kind of felt like they're trying to cover their bases for being like, this isn't really the 80s, but it's like kind of meant to be sugar-coated because it's from, Neil Patrick Harris talking to a kid, but at the same time, it's kind of trying to have some of that prickliness of the time period. So it felt totally a little weird in that respect, but yeah, it's also a kid movie. It's on HBO Max. So I'm not expecting a hard, deep cultural commentary on the 80s from this film.
Nor would I want there to be. That's not really what I want from a movie like this. Right? Like, I just want a comfort food movie. If you're going to call your movie 8-Bit Christmas, I want to be able to curl up by the fire and watch a movie called 8-Bit Christmas. And the movie delivers on that. So I think that I end up coming away from it being like, it's harmless. It's an easy film to recommend to a certain type of person who watches a certain type of movie during the holidays. There you go. I really have nothing else to add beyond that. It's very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm like slightly more negative, but not by a lot. I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. Better than I anticipate. I don't think it's anything I would recommend to a wide group of people, but I think certain people I know would really appreciate it, and I hope they get something out of it. So,
sure.
Yeah, it's an okay film.
16 critics have rated it on Rotten Tomatoes. Not a lot. 16?
Yeah.
They have a lot of sway. What do you think the tomato meter, where do you think it's at for critics right now?
This one I did see a few days back.
Okay, let's see if it was different. Okay.
Because I was going to watch Bruised, the Halle Berry film, and then I was hearing on Letterboxd, like, oh, it's not that good. Don't watch it. And I looked and I saw Rotten Tomatoes was also pretty negative on it. So I was like, I'll skip that one. What else could I watch instead? And I was just kind of scanning what movies got tomatoes, and I saw 8-Bit Christmas.
You're like, how can I cheat on the next episode of Cinemaholics? Encanto, 92%.
But I think last I saw it was like in the 80-something%. I don't think it was quite 90, but it was higher than I anticipated. I'm going to guess now it's probably about like 78%.
75. So you're right that it went down. It went down even further than you expected. So it's at 75%. I was actually surprised. That's a lot higher than I was expecting. I thought this would be in the 60s, but no, decent amount of critics are liking it. I mean, look, if you look at the actual ratings, they're not over the moon. Lots of 3.5 out of 5, 3 out of 4, that kind of thing.
But I think for a movie like this, the people who are going to seek it out and review it are folks that are going to give it the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't think it's going to be... Yeah. If it had gotten a theatrical release, maybe it would have gotten a wider series of reviews, and probably a lot of them would have been more critical or negative or scathing or whatever. But for a film like this, I think the people who want to see are going to seek it out, and that makes sense to me.
What about audience score? Only 100+ ratings. We don't have verified ratings. It's kind of hard. This is a tough one to predict.
My gut says 90%.
73%.
Wow,
both movies this week were like neck and neck between critics and audiences. Audiences and critics are having a fun week together. Get a room.
Yeah, they're just toweling around and having a good time.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that is 8-Bit Christmas. Like we mentioned, it is now streaming on HBO Max. It is just 97 minutes long. Very short film.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we have for you this week on Cinemaholics. Next week, we're hoping to talk about Power of the Dog. We might get to Nightmare Alley, unless we do a bonus of that film. I think what else is coming out this coming week? Will Ash, and I'm blanking. I think Benedetta hit some theaters, but I don't know if we'll talk about it. I don't know how many theaters it'll be in, though, to be honest with you.
I know Come On is getting a wider release. It's coming to my neck of the woods.
It's already playing in the Bay Area. Yeah, I hope we talk about it soon.
Other than that, I feel like there's something big I'm forgetting about.
I think we're both forgetting a big film, and it's going to come to both of us at around the same time, and we're going to feel foolish. I'm looking it up right now because I'm ready to find out.
Yeah. Well, this
Single
is where
All the Way that comes out December.
Single. I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. I just saw it on the list.
Well, this is where release dates get confusing because it's like certain things are technically out in certain cities, but not others. So it's like, yeah, technically this thing is out, but like, you know, it'll be out where you are, but not where I am.
I think we're getting a lot of expanded releases to what you're saying. I'm actually looking at it, and there's the animated Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which hits Disney Plus, and there's a film called Encanto, an Amazon film with Riz Ahmed, and Mixtape on Netflix, which seems like a kind of minor release, and then there's Flea from Neon, but that's it.
There is also Woof,
a Netflix animated film.
Okay. There's Woof, which you mentioned earlier in this episode.
Is that expanding?
And there's that's I think a wide release.
Really?
I don't think it's out yet.
Very surprising. I thought Wolf was in a couple theaters like New York and LA.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Wolf comes out to my local theaters this weekend.
Okay.
But there's also that Shaun the Sheep thing on Netflix. I don't know if that's a feature or a special.
Oh, really?
But
I don't know what that one is specifically.
The Flight Before Christmas.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So, I love that Shaun the Sheep. I might check that one out. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing at least. I don't know about you.
Fun stuff. I know Red Rocket is going to be hitting limited release in a couple of days. I don't know if you're going to be seeing it anytime soon. I hope you do, because I'm anxious to talk about Red Rocket with you. It's my favorite film of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of time.
Yeah. It's not near me as far as I can tell, but I was just surprised to see that Benedetta is apparently getting a AMC release, which really surprises me.
Wow, yeah, that is surprising. Okay.
Because I was just going to see that at the one art house theater, and I might still, because I want to support it, but I did not know that was at the AMC as well. Yeah. Isn't that like nearly NC-17?
Is that NC? I don't know why it would be.
I think it's NR according to the AMC app, so I don't know.
That's not the same thing. There's nothing in that movie that I've seen that I would be like, oh, that's too much for R. All right, I just looked it up. It's rated R.
Okay.
Yeah. So I won't say why, because it actually is kind of spoilery. But
sure.
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven, you sly dog. You got in through the MPA's weird standards.
Yeah, I think the not rated probably has more to do with like whenever that was released, and they just hadn't quite gotten to it yet. Yeah.
All right. But anyway, yeah.
Great film. Can't wait for you to see it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see that. I mean, we also, like you said, we'll both be seeing Swan Song, so I guess technically we can cover that.
Swan Song, yeah. It would be great to cover that. And Try Harder we could talk about again, since that hits limited. Mm-hmm. In theaters pretty soon.
Yeah, so no shortage of things we can talk about this upcoming week. It just depends on what we can see. I think also The Hand of God is coming to select theaters, but I don't know if that's also going to be on Netflix this Friday. We'll see.
I think that's streaming on Netflix on the 15th. I don't know the theatrical rollout, unfortunately.
Anyway, we've gone long, and there are a lot of movies we got to see.
Let's get out of here.
And we appreciate everyone who listened this far ahead, and I gotta get ready to go to bed. It's almost 2:30 here.
You have a good night, Will Ashton. Thanks for staying up and talking about movies with me. It's fun. It's like we're at a slumber party, and I'm keeping you awake.
I know. Yeah, I was not expecting us to go this long, but I appreciate it, John. I always like talking movies with you, no matter how late. So yeah,
it's a blast. But I'll see you next week, and also listeners, we'll talk to you pretty soon here. See you on the next one.